June the 12th, 2020. That's what G said. Busy episode. We're going to get right into it. We talk some NBA with Alex Regla. We have some Friday Belmont, some Friday Churchill, some Saturday Belmont, some Sunday Lone Star. Then we talk All Elite Wrestling with Alex. We preview Backlash with Darin Zoccali. And it's on to Halloween Havoc with Darin and Andrew. Enjoy. We know the NBA is coming back. Yes, folks. I think what Bill referred to as NBA holes. I'm one of them, and the gentleman joining me right now, you all know. I believe he is also one of them. We are huge NBA fans. We're big Laker fans, but we're very excited that the NBA is going to be back. They have a kind of a tentative plan, and they're going to try to work backwards from it. It looks like the dates are going to be either July 30th or July 31st. And we're going to talk all about that plan to get the NBA back up and started with our good friend. He is always on when we talk basketball here, Alex Regla. Alex, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, Gino. Thanks again for having me on. I think this is like the fourth time?
At least, and you've been on the Mike Abadier show with me a few times before that too, the other show that I co-host. So anytime it's basketball, I'm gonna bring you in, and we're gonna even talk a little more than basketball today. We're gonna talk some wrestling. We haven't had any basketball to talk the last few months, Alex. So exciting if you're an NBA fan. We're not necessarily having to deal with what baseball's having to deal with the players and the union going back and forth. The NBA said, hey, we're gonna circle this date, and it's gonna be July 30th, 31st. And we're going to have 22 teams coming into the Disney Wide World of Sports complex. They're going to finish out, I believe, the last 8 games or so of the year, and then get into the playoffs. And the NBA season will be completed by October the 12th. This is going to be something that we've unlike any version of sports that we've ever seen.
No, absolutely. And I think everybody was kind of expecting that the NBA would return. It was just a matter of what it would look like, if they were going to go like the World Cup route, or would they go like a full 1-16 where the conferences kind of go out the window. But they ended up coming to this kind of 1-8 kind of traditional, but that play-in system with the number 8 seed, that's kind of the new thing that they're planning on doing. So it'll be interesting, especially for the Lakers as the number 1 seed, and it looks like they'll be the number 1 seed unless they kind of struggle in these next 8 games that they do play. But I think as a Lakers fan, and it's just someone who covers the Lakers and is kind of invested in them, it'll be really interesting to see how that number 8 seed shakes out.
So just for some of you out there who may not have heard or don't know some of the specifics. So what the NBA has decided to do now is they're going to be playing in what they're calling the bubble at Walt Disney World, and 22 teams are going to be finishing out the season. The reason why they picked 22 was because they wanted to pick teams that were within striking range of making it into the 8th seed or the bottom of the playoffs. They felt like some of those teams that have already been eliminated and had no opportunity to make them, to make the playoffs or to make a run for a title, you didn't need to bring all that extra personnel into the bubble and add all these other people who, could be just more opportunity for folks to catch the virus or for someone to become infected. So what I like about the NBA, more than anything, I'm just a big fan of Adam Silver. I think he does a really good job of listening. He seems like he goes back and forth. He cares a lot about the players. He cares a lot about the fans. And I kind of like just trust him in situations like this.
I do too. And I think, like I said earlier, I think we all expected the NBA might return. But it sounds like Adam Silver and kind of the players union and everyone involved really wanted to make sure before they decide on coming back, everyone's safe. The players are on the same page. They take a vote on it. They contacted some players. They had some private phone calls with a group of stars, like with LeBron James and AD involved. So it sounds like they want to make sure every party involved is okay with this before they go to this bubble. And it's kind of refreshing to have a sports owner like Adam Silver, who is pretty wide open and is kind of progressive in that way.
And so we will have an 8-game finish to the season, which will basically give an opportunity to some of those teams that weren't in the top 8 to try to make a little run to get there or to get a little bit closer. Because you mentioned a key point. If there is one of if there are teams that are within 4 games of that 8th seed, if you're in 9th, you're going to have the opportunity to have a play-in where you could beat the 8th seed twice, they'd only have to beat you once, and then you would play your way in. I think the running joke out there has been that this is like the Zion rule that the NBA wants, which you can understand. They wanted to give some of their stars the opportunity to get into a playoff. Zion missed a ton of the year. The Pelicans had been playing very well. Someone like Damian Lillard now, he and the Trailblazers have an opportunity to kind of play their way in. So I get this from a league standpoint. I guess as a Laker fan, I'm a little nervous. I wouldn't want to have those Pelicans in a first round series. That would be fun, but they wouldn't feel a whole lot of pressure against the Lakers.
I think that's the team. I think either them or Portland if Memphis does kind of blow it here, because Memphis, like you were saying, they wanted to make sure those teams had a chance just because the season was kind of cut off and everything. But they did give the number 8 team Memphis a lot of chances to stick as the number 8 team. So as long as Memphis doesn't blow it, I think I'd be most afraid of playing a team like Portland or New Orleans, like you mentioned, just because New Orleans is so young, and you never know with young teams. They really have nothing to play for. It's just all kind of icing at that point. And there's also that extra kind of baggage where like guys like Ingram, Lonzo, and Hart were traded from the Lakers, so they, those guys would want to. They would love nothing more than to knock out the Lakers in the first round.
So I guess from one sense, this does, help. I think some of the teams that might not have been, getting a home court advantage or getting having a series or two where you're going to be at home, because we look at the Lakers and this maybe doesn't affect them as much. They've been a really good road team all throughout the year, but the Lakers and the Bucks, they had excellent 65 game stretches or so where they built up these great records that were likely going to give them the opportunity to have home court advantage through. And now you're going to be in a situation where there really is no home court.
And I was kind of thinking about this the other day. Like, I wonder which teams do have an advantage in that situation. And like you mentioned, Lakers and Bucks both respectively had the best road records in their conference this year. So you would kind of assume like those teams wouldn't be affected as much as, say, a team who kind of really thrives at home, like a Denver, who's always kind of had
It's a great point, or a Utah. Yeah,
exactly.
Yep.
Or even Portland. Like the Lakers hate going to Portland. So I think the Lakers and the Bucks specifically don't mind this as much. Same with the Clippers. Like the Clippers wouldn't want to get in a matchup against the Lakers where they would have to split that home court advantage or not have it at all. And I was just thinking, like, I'm assuming the veteran teams and those teams who do well on the road would be kind of serve the best in this type of situation, whereas a young team might be rattled if they're not at a strictly behind their home crowd or don't have that playoff experience to begin with. And if nothing else, a team like the Lakers have proved all year that they have this insanely impressive chemistry that they built from day one. And it sounds like that's just going to translate over no matter what situation, because they've gone through so much as a team this year.
I think so too. I kind of feel that same way. You started to get to a point, which I want to talk a little bit about too. What's interesting about this is that it's just going to be different. Now, most of us have never been in a situation where we're, in a bubble like this, where you're isolated for a couple months, where you don't have the complete freedom to just, you have a bad day, you go for a drive, or you go have a drink, or you go meet with someone. Like, there are going to be a lot of players that aren't used to what this entails. And I was reading, there were some of the team, like psychologists and stuff, that were a little bit worried that there are some people who may not respond well to this. I think you hit a great point. It feels like the teams that have really good leadership, I think, will be okay here. And this doesn't bother me as something for the Lakers, but maybe a young team, and maybe even like a team like we were talking about with the Pelicans or one of them. You just never know how someone's going to react in a situation that they've never been in.
Exactly. And I think teams like the Lakers, like the Bucks, I think that's what they're kind of banking on in this type of situation, that team chemistry they built all year, that roster construction full of veterans like a Jared Dudley and LeBron, obviously, just having guys like that who've been through wars and gone through all this type of stuff and seen almost everything will at least kind of prepare them more for this unique experience than, say, a rookie, like a John Morant, if it's like a Memphis or someone like that, who's first of all has to deal with first-time playoffs and also dealing with this, insanely scary pandemic that's going on and playing in this totally new environment. And I think those veteran teams probably will have an advantage.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. A couple of more specifics to go through. So just this is kind of reading from one of the Woj and Bobby Marks articles that came out a little earlier today. So 14 of the teams that are there are going to be eliminated within 53 days. And then only 4 teams are going to be there remaining after 67 days. So I guess when you put it in that sense of just a couple of months, it doesn't feel as bad as when you look at the grand scheme of things and maybe it feeling like you're going to be there for July, even through October. A lot of these teams won't be there that long. And the NBA is hoping to kind of work something out where once teams get eliminated, the family members for some of the other teams can come into the bubble. And so that way they're not going to be – some of these teams' players won't be away from their family for all that long, which I think is a really good idea too. You want to try to keep these players as happy as possible in a crazy world. We've got training camps that are going to go from July 9th through 11th. Teams will briefly quarantine before beginning formal training camps, and then regular season games resuming on July the 30th. Let's see, anything else to mention on here? Oh, and then this is another thing. So the free agent players, such as DeMarcus Cousins, Isaiah Thomas, or even players like J.R. Smith, Jamal Crawford, who weren't on rosters, they are now eligible to sign into open rosters. There's going to be a 1-week transaction window in late June that's going to give teams the opportunity to waive or sign a player. Do you think the Lakers will bring DeMarcus back?
I think that's the name that a lot of people have kind of, either him or J.R. Smith, that they've been linked to the most. And DeMarcus, even though he did play this year and he had that injury that, cost him the year, it seems like he was really liked in the locker room. And it seems like there was kind of like a wink thing when he got released that, hey, we need this roster spot for Markieff Morris, but, next year, we might just sign you again. It seems like there's, because even when he was cut, he would still come around the Lakers training facility and work out. So I'm not sure who they would cut, because they would still have to cut someone to sign DeMarcus Cousins, I believe. I mean, unless
because they don't have a roster. It says 8 teams: Denver, Clippers, Memphis, OKC, Phoenix, Portland, Sacramento, and San Antonio. They have open roster spots right now.
Exactly. So unless they think a guy like maybe Dion Waiters just didn't work out before we even got to see him play, or whatever, or we don't even know what DeMarcus Cousins, just him specifically is able to do at this stage. We don't know how healthy he is, or really, I mean, they have a lot of bigs already. They have Dwight, McGee. Yeah. AD is probably going to play a lot more center in the playoffs, so I'm not sure where that leaves a guy like DeMarcus. But maybe a guy like J.R. Smith makes some sense if they need another wing, a defender, a shooter. But I mean, I wouldn't be super surprised if they signed one, but I also wouldn't be not surprised if they signed someone.
And a few of the last things we'll talk about when in NBA, it was just an unfortunate, obviously, everything going on. It was for the Lakers as far as timing. They were really playing the best ball of all year, right when things went wrong. They had strung together a couple impressive wins over the Bucks and then over the Clippers, kind of the two teams that people had circled and said, well, you can't beat them, so you're not that good. Well, they checked those boxes, and then boom, unfortunately we haven't seen them since. So it's just going to be really interesting. It felt like things were starting to really come together for the Lakers for that final stretch. And on the opposite sense, it seemed like Milwaukee was kind of hitting their first real struggle. So I guess from that sense, the top 2 teams are going to be coming into this rested, ready to rock. And that last kind of thing, like, do you think this additional time helps any teams in particular? For me, maybe a team like the Clippers, who Paul George and Kawhi could have used that extra time off.
Yeah, I was thinking the Clippers as well, just because all year they have been doing this, resting their players and stuff like that. And I mean, I always go back to, if you give LeBron extra time, extra rest, like that's always going to be a good thing, especially if he just has to play 8 games and just go straight crazy playoff LeBron. And I think that definitely helps him. AD has been kind of dealing with injuries kind of off and on all year. So I think for anytime you could have those star players around the league get some extra rest, that's good. But in terms of getting players back, I see a team like Portland. You would get a guy like Nurkic and Zach Collins back, 2 bigs that can really help them, especially in a series against the Lakers, who have a lot of size. So I think that helps them a lot. Just around the league, I think this was a good chance to get players healthy and stuff like that. So I think that kind of helps everyone.
Alex Regla, we're going to have a lot more basketball to discuss soon. I can't wait till, August, the first couple days of August, when I get you back on and we're actually able to recap some of these first few games, it's going to be different. And I'm glad. It seems like the NBA did a great job of saying, hey, we can't go straight into a playoff. We know this is going to be a little weird. Let's have it finish the season. We'll give some teams a chance to get back in. And more than anything, I think even more than giving teams a chance to get in, it gives them 8 games to kind of work out some of the issues that they might have.
Yeah, like a little preseason. I've always definitely wanted them to get a little practice in before the playoffs. I mean, you understand there's going to be more risk involved the more games you play there and everything like that. But in terms of the actual basketball performance and how well everyone plays, you definitely need to warm up. And I think that's kind of what they wanted. And the players wanted that too.
Alex Regla, tell us about Throwdowns and tell us about where we can find some of your work online.
Yeah, so I started a newsletter called Throwdowns, like you mentioned. It's mostly Lakers stuff, but also some wrestling things, and I've been lucky to interview a few cool people. So yeah, you can subscribe for free, throwdowns.substack. I've been pretty busy. I've gone back to work, so I haven't been able to write as much as I've wanted to. But yeah, it's pretty cool to kind of make my own little website and write about the things I want to write about.
Alex Regla, we're going to be cutting off the NBA talk right now, but this isn't the only time the folks are going to be hearing you on That's What G Said. A little later on in the episode, they're going to hear us talk a little All Elite Wrestling and recap Dynamite. So, Alex, thanks for now, but we'll be talking to you again very soon.
Sounds good, Gino.
Thank you to Alex for talking some NBA. It's not the only time you're going to be hearing Alex on this show. We discuss AEW, All Elite Wrestling Dynamite, coming up in just a little bit. Right now, we're going to focus on horse racing. We're just going to quickly go through our plays for the weekend, a couple different racetracks to discuss. Next week is a big weekend at Belmont, and we'll have a ton of horse racing throughout the week. We'll start playing that Canterbury Pick 5 a little bit. I think every episode we're gonna talk a little bit about that Pick 5. It just makes a lot of sense as a low takeout wager. Nonetheless, let's get into Belmont for Friday. A couple plays for you. Let's get to race number 4 for our first play at Belmont, and I'm gonna go to the 5 Taurus Del Paine, whose career best was going long on the grass when that second in the Laurel Futurity behind Irish Mia's. I just think he's going to sit close throughout. It seems like this is a really good spot for him. He's in for 40. He was in stakes races a couple times, but he seemed a little bit overmatched last time out, and I think this is a good spot for Taurus Del Paine, the number 5. Make sure to use him in your exotics and make a win wager if you can get around 7-2 on that one. Let's get to race number 6 at Belmont. So we're talking Belmont for Friday, June the 12th, and I'm going to go to the number 7 in race number 6. That is Miss Munnings. She was saving ground inside. She had to alter course late when things got tight inside. That was the difference between 5th and 3rd. You look at her effort, you see that she finished 5th. Doesn't look as great, but she should have been 3rd that day. And she was in a race where Silver Kitten, the 2nd place finisher, came back to win an optional 62 non-2 next out. 3rd place finisher came back to win a first level allowance. She ran the same race that she's been running. I think she was just in a tad too tough, and she had that little bit of trouble. If she runs that same race, that's good enough to beat this group. If she's 7-2, she's worth the play. That's the number 7, Miss Munnings, in race number 6 at Belmont on Friday. Let's get to race 7, the 1 Sharp Star. Completely missed the break, was last, was 10 lengths off, when the winner sat really, really close up just off. Sharp Star was able to angle 3 deep and make a huge wide move, was widest of all in the stretch. The rail draw is the major concern. Going 6 furlongs, I hope she doesn't break slowly and then get shuffled back. If she's able to work out a nice trip, I think this is a great spot for the 1 Sharp Star. We'll make a win wager if we can get anything around 4-1. In race number 8, totally respect the 2 Chewing Gum. That would be a horse to include in a lot of your exotics. But I think the 6, Back to His Roots. He was up close early on in between horses last time we saw him, and he just got backed up into. He lost all chance. It was just a brutal, brutal trip. In the last 2 starts, he's been behind a horse named Faction Cat, who has 8 straight in the money finishes. Look at some of his races earlier on, too, in 2018 before he went to the bench.
he's behind Mind Control. He's got a good second sprinting on the grass behind Uncle Benny. Those 2 races are really good. He comes back and he wins a race that's taken off the grass, a small stakes race too. And then since then, he needed the first start going long on the grass. He's come back and he ran 2 pretty bang-up races in a row at Tampa, and then legitimate trouble last time out, which is going to build his price up a little bit. Back to his roots. Anything around 8-1 or so worthy of a win wager on the 6. In the 9th race, I did think Bankit has a legit shot to upset Mr. Buff. I'm just a little concerned that Mr. Buff might be able to get out front in here. I think the real key to the race are, horses like Blue It and Build to Suit. Can they push Mr. Buff? If so, I think if he gets, pushed at all, a horse like Bankit, who's been coming out of good open company races. He was behind Endorsed last time. Then Endorsed came back to run really well when finishing second behind Code of Honor. The number 1, Bankit. Perhaps an exotic single in some of your late exotics. And maybe, if we can get around 5-2, I think that would be a fair price in here. Because to me, it just looks like it's either going to be Mr. Buff. And if it's not Mr. Buff, that means it's likely because he got pushed. And I think that sets up for Bankit, who might even be the better horse. Let's go with Bankit. So there's your Belmont Friday, the 4th race, the number 5, Torres del Paine, 6th race, the number 7, Miss Munnings, 7th race, the 1, Sharp Star, 8th, the number 6, Back to His Roots, and the 9th, the number 1, Bankit. Good luck Friday at Belmont Park. Let's get you over to Churchill. And we go to Churchill Downs. Let's get your past performances out. Friday, June the 12th, a couple plays at Churchill in race number 1. I thought that number 9 is an interesting horse to look at, Rosafa. She cleared the field. She crossed over. I think she just found the mile a little bit too far last time out. Now you get that great cutback from the mile to 6.5 furlongs. She's drawn well. She's proven in previous races that she can sit and pass horses if need be. You get the drop in class here from the maiden 20s to the maiden 10. I think Rosafa sitting close on the cutback. Rosafa. Make sure to include in all your exotics. Make a win wager. You can get like 5-1 or so. In race number 3, the 5 Fast Boat looks like he's in a great spot here. I think he trips out. He gets off the rail, and he had a good start in his most recent race. He was right in the mix early, but a couple horses to the outside lined up. So he ends up getting shuffled. He loses a few lengths. He comes on again. He ends up splitting horses early in the stretch, but he couldn't quite get to the top 2. Still a pretty good effort that day from Fast Boat. And you look at this race with Bulletin drawn in the inside. You have a horse like Coppertown who's fresh, who's got some speed. You have Just Might who's going to be going in here. I think it's going to be a great setup for Fast Boat. Off the pace, anything around 5-2 will make a win wager and maybe an early exotic single with Fast Boat. Later in the card at Churchill in race number 6, so if you're playing any kind of the late exotics, I thought you may not have to go too deep in some of the, like race number 6, if we move a little later in the card, kicks off your late pick 4 sequence. Bala Rocks looks like the one to beat. Mixed Star looks like the one to catch. Those would be the only 2 I would think about using in exotics. In race number 7, the 2, the Great Dansky, I think he's the one to beat, and he can sit off a little bit. But if he gets caught up in a quick early pace battle, it's the 5 Sacred Oath who's going to get the best trip in here. So Sacred Oath, I would just use, along with the 2, 2, and 5 in any of your late exotics. In race number 8 at Churchill, Erner is the one to beat. He broke well. He sat close up. He was within a few lengths. He was bumped a bit, 3 deep. He settled into a nice spot. He actually kind of got shuffled a little bit. He was back to 6th. 3 deep. He's in the second flight. And then he's in between. He makes a nice 3 deep, a 4 move up the challenge, gets the win. And he should be sitting close. And a horse who's going to come closing late and has no problem going the mile in an eighth, because we know that with his victory on May the 2nd at Oaklawn, that's the 4 Hunt the Front. I would just be using 4 and 5 in the exotics in race number 8. And then in the 9th race, I think you probably want to go a little deeper and spread out. But my top selection here is the 2 Full Authority. If we can get 6-1, I'm going to make a win wager. He's the one to catch. He's a 3-year-old son of Summerfront who was excellent on the grass. There should be no issue with the turf for him. And he's going to be making his first start on the grass. He's making his 4th career start. He's going to put 2 starts together, second start for the new barn. We know he's got some speed because he showed it sprinting. There's not a ton of other speed in here. I think he can steal this race. I hope they send him hard. Full Authority, the number 2, will make a win wager if we get anything around 6-1. So at Churchill for Friday, in the first, the number 9, Rosafa. In the third, the number 5, Fast Boat. And in the ninth, the number 2, Full Authority. I would, if you're playing any kind of exotics, I went through those 6th, 7th, and 8th. I didn't think you need to spread out a whole lot to get through those. So best of luck on Friday at Belmont and on Friday at Churchill. Now we head over to Saturday for a couple plays at Belmont. June the 13th. It's not really like a massive Saturday. Last week was a big Saturday, and next week will be another big Saturday. This one's kind of a quiet Saturday, so we're just going to talk a little bit about Belmont Park, and I'm going to get to race number 2 for the first play over at Belmont, and it's going to be the number 10, Quality Choice. He's coming back to the grass, and that's just going to be key for him. He's won his last 2 starts on the grass. He's hooked a lot tougher in the most recent races on the dirt, and then go back to some of those grass races. Look at how many key races, next out winners, productive races that he's coming out of. I think Quality Choice, he's not really quick, but if they go slow, he has enough speed to show it. Quality Choice back to the turf. I'm going to be using in all exotics and probably making a win wager on the number 10, Quality Choice. Let's move to race number 6 at Belmont Park, and it is the number 6, Honey Won't, who's been showing good speed, going longer. Now you're going to cut back to a sprint. This is a horse who's had no problem sprinting before in the past. I think you'll get the opportunity to have more of a mid-pack trip, and you'll have a lot more punch late with Honey Won't, the number 6, in race number 6. We move to race number 8, the number 7, Officer Hutchie. Most recently beat 2 next out winners. He's never run a bad race. Both of his losses came to next out winners. One of them was to Glass Ceiling, who won an open first level allowance after beating him. And the next one was to A Freud of Mama, who won a $100,000 New York bred stakes race after beating Officer Hutchie. It's a great spot for the number 7 in race number 8, Officer Hutchie. In the 9th race, which is the feature, the stakes race, a couple to mention, the 2 inside horses look like they're going to get a trip. I think She's a Julie's also going to run a lot better. She's completely missed the break, but there's other speed in here that concerns me. That's why the 1, Pink Sands, who the 1-turn layout should be perfect for, I think she ends up getting the trip in what doesn't look to be the strongest renewal of this race on paper. The number 1, Pink Sands from the inside, hopes they go quick early and comes flying late. That's race number 9, the 1. So a Belmont in the second race, the number 10, Quality Choice. In the 6th, the number 6, Honey Won't. In the 8th, the number 7, Officer Hutchie. And in the 9th, the number 1, Pink Sands. Those are your plays for Belmont Park on Saturday. It's a big day of racing on Sunday over at Lone Star Park. It was a lot of fun handicapping some of these races. I got to see a lot of my old friends from Sam Houston here, so many familiar names for me that I saw run a bunch earlier this year. Let's go to race number 3. I'm going to give you some horses to play throughout the card. The 1, Eaton's Memory. This filly just doesn't really get any respect ever. She just keeps winning and winning at big prices. Look at some of the races she's won. She broke her maiden at over 13-1. Her second victory came at just under 10-1. When she won the third time, she was 17-1. She came back and won her fourth start, or not her fourth start, but her fourth victory, and she was just under 7-1. And then when she won for her 5th victory, she was over 9-1. In a stakes race, she came back last time and finally got bet, and she won. There is not a lot of speed in here. I think she gets the lead from the rail. If for some reason I'm a discreet lady or somebody else is sent hard, I think she actually can sit a little bit here. So the 1, Eaton's Memory, if she's anything around 9-2, that seems like a very fair price in race number 3 at Lone Star. Race number 4, I'm going to go to the number 4, JC's Nightcap. Totally respect I'm a Bling. I think the horse who deserves to take a lot of money. Same thing with Direct Dial. Both of them make sense. But JC's Nightcap, you're going to get Parker to jump back aboard. He was up for the 2-back second-place finish on the grass at Sam Houston. JC's Nightcap, he had a brutal start. He was bumped, he took up, just completely tossed the race. He had no shot after that start. He's got some decent races on the dirt. He's a little bit sneaky in here. JC's Nightcap, make sure to use him in your exotics. We'll make a win wager if we can get anything around 6-1 on the 4 in race number 4. In the 5th race, I don't have a strong opinion. I do think Redditori is going to be tough. I just haven't really been a fan of the way that Lindy Wade has ridden the number 1 Sunlit song. The last 2. He's opened up or he's had opportunities. I think you're better off sending him. Send him, spread the field out, try to get your separation. He opened up early and then he slowed things down and they went sub 50 to the half mile. If you want to try to beat a horse like Redditori, you got to try to run him off their feet early. And he just hasn't been able to do that. So I don't know if maybe he's not good enough. Maybe Redditori can sit too close. I would just really like to see Lindy Wade send him hard. Let's go to race number 6. The number 5, He's a Suitor, is now a first-time gelding. In his debut, he lost. He was third. He was third. He was going long against Open Company. In his second start, he cut back to a sprint against Texas Breds, and he absolutely crushed. Look at this race. There was a very, very fast animal named Wonders of His Love. You have Moro Said Ready, who's quick. You have Rock the Devil, who's quick. You have the horse from the inside, Moro Appeal, who's got a little bit of speed. Good Judgment is exactly slow, and neither is Bubba Bling. Any combination of them on the front end, it should set up. It should set up for Gold Pilot to come closing, but it also could set up for He's a Suitor. Another one who gets Parker aboard, very capable pilot. He's a Suitor. Make sure to include him in all of your exotics there. We'll make a win wager if we can get around 8-1 or so. In race number 7, the Bar Alas, the 3 always in the money is the one to beat. He was one of 5 next out winners back on February the 26th and then came back and crushed 1 by 8 at Will Rogers in the slop. The 6 No Mas Tequila is a horse who has some ability for Broberg. I've seen Carl talk about this horse a little bit, and he's one that the connections were patient. They were able to take a little more time with him. And he's really put it all together in his last 2 starts, both of them winning at over 5-1. He has the opportunity to sit close. He doesn't need the lead. He can sit just off and try to get the jump, on anyone that's going to come from off the pace. I just don't know how this race is going to shape up. And that might be where you want to be. He actually could get a great trip, or No Mas Tequila, she should be getting a good trip in here because you have speed, really all throughout the field. Brightest is really quick, always in the money, can go but can sit. You've seen speed from Dancing All Alone. We've seen speed from Tell Me You Love Me. We've seen speed from pretty much everyone in here. That was my lone concern with No Mas Tequila, but I will use the 3 and the 6 in all of the exotics there in race number 7. In the 8th race, I'm going to give Herb's Love an opportunity to bounce back. He was in some traffic early. He settled 5th on the inside, and then he started traveling well. He ran right up onto the heels of a rival. He just had nowhere to go. Then he gets a dream run through. He gets all the way up into 3rd, and he just tires late, and he fades. If you toss that race, I keep saying he with Herb's Love too, if you toss that race, her form is excellent prior to that. So good luck to owner Sam Sherman, Parker, and Danny Pish teaming up with Herb's Love. I'll be using Herb in all the exotics. We'll make a win wager if we can get around 6-1. Closing things out in race number 9. What's wrong with the 9, Cowboy Bling? Okay, maybe he's not quite as good as Can I Bob. You're going to get a much better price. There's an opportunity that Can I Bob might get caught up in kind of a pace battle in here, and I don't think that's going to happen for Cowboy Bling. Cowboy Bling, who's been good on the grass as of late and has improved, now gets back to the dirt where he's done some of his better work. Cowboy Bling. Make sure to use him in all of your exotics. That's the number 9. So we got some plays for you at Lone Star for Sunday. The 3rd, the number 1, Eaton's Memory. The 4th, the 4, JC's Nightcap. The 6th, the 5, He's a Suitor. The 8th race, the number 7, Herb's Love. And the 9th, the number 9, Cowboy Bling. So now, generally, when you hear Alex Regla on That's What G Said, we are talking basketball. But Alex is not only a huge basketball fan, writes about basketball, covers it. He does a great job analyzing it. He's a big baseball fan, Dodger fan too. But he's a huge wrestling fan, which I love. And Alex, you're not just like a mainstream turn on the WWF. You watch New Japan. You watch some of the really good stuff. And one wrestling company that we've had the privilege of
kind of being able to follow from the very, very beginning over the last year and a half as they've come together is All Elite Wrestling. I have a ton of fun on Wednesday nights with Dynamite.
Oh, man, so do I. I think this is the first time, probably since the 90s, I would say, where like every week I have to tune into something. And I think that's, with every Wednesday on Dynamite, that's kind of what that feels like again, where it's like, I really don't want to miss this episode. Like, I haven't watched WWE, honestly, in maybe a few months. I still keep up with it, like through podcasts and some writers I really enjoy. But in terms of actually watching the product, the only thing I watch consistently is AEW.
And I got to say, it's been a tough time for all major sporting events and major organizations too with the pandemic. And we're watching wrestling where there are no fans. The one thing that All Elite Wrestling did immediately, way, way better than WWE, was figure out how to work with this no fan and by not having a completely empty audience. They had wrestlers in the audience, which were able to, you could hear them. They were able to spark feuds. They were cutting promos from the audience. Sometimes they were out there drinking and betting on stuff.
Taking bets, yeah.
Yeah, they did a great job from the very beginning, figuring things out. They weren't shooting the whole empty arena all that much. I think they've got a great, great team behind them.
I think creatively, I think they've really stood out here. I think they've really showed that they have the right kind of minds, backstage and just in terms of their performers. And like you said, just having those guys, those wrestlers out there, like you said, not just to make noise, but to kind of push feuds forward,
further things, further storylines, yeah.
And early on, it was really cool to see like a babyface side and a heel side where you kind of have these different feuding investments into these matches, and I've really just enjoyed how they've done that. And then lately, being able to film at Daly's Place in Jacksonville and kind of having that outdoor setting is really, really cool.
Yeah, they're doing a great job, and now we'll get specifically into this past week. So AEW Dynamite, one thing that was the biggest and most important thing for this company from the very beginning was getting on a TV network that would be accessible for a lot of people. And the fact that they were able to get, on TNT like this, the same place where we used to watch WCW years back, and a place that people associate with wrestling, I think was the absolute home run for them. And they've been able to get stars. I mean, you start out with a guy like Chris Jericho, and he's the face of your company. People know that face. He's been on, hosts all sorts of different shows. He's been in the wrestling. I mean, I was watching, because I'm doing a recap later of Halloween Havoc 1998. And he was, the one with Hogan and the Warrior and everything. He was out there cutting an incredible promo when he's so young. And it's funny to see him 22 years later on the very same network. And he came out early on, and he was a part of the commentary team for most of the show. Anytime he is on commentary, he adds so much. He's just so entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when they're doing Wrestler of the Year awards and kind of who was in that running and stuff. And a lot of people pick Chris Jericho, not only because obviously he's not the performer he used to be, but strictly in terms of how important he's been to an AEW and upstart promotion, and just adding that kind of credibility, just with adding that kind of name, and his this whole inner circle thing and this whole the champion thing, just everything is just really working with him in AEW. And man, that signing was just a home run from them.
It really was. So we kick off the show, and Jericho's on commentary, and we're going to get the debut from FTR, which, for those of you who don't know, FTR, they were the Revival in WWE and NXT, and they are one of the best tag teams in the world. So we get the FTR debut against Butcher and the Blade. I like the little things like this too. You have Arn Anderson and Tully in the stands with their notepads, right? They're scouting and they're taking notes. This is one thing about AEW too, is they don't really have as many squash matches, or if they do, they give the folks that are getting squashed quite a bit back and forth. This wasn't a squash. Butcher and Blade are definitely a team in the tag team division, but this match went pretty long. It went back and forth. It was a showcase, and I think as a company, they just do things a little bit differently. They don't really have 30-second matches. Even a match where the point is getting somebody over, they end up going 10 minutes a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think we can kind of point to like their bigger guys like a Brody Lee. Like I remember he had that match against Marco Stunt, and like you said, it wasn't a quick 5-second match. He kind of bullied him to kind of get over how strong and how menacing and how much of a threat this guy is. But it took him a few minutes to beat a guy like Marco Stunt just to get over like how dominant he could be. And I think that's something I've really enjoyed about AEW is that they've always kind of pitched that their wins matter and records matter and kind of the sports element and stuff like that. So these wins over guys who are kind of considered like jobbers or whatever, they still count as wins in terms of kind of progressing their story. So every match is kind of worth watching just from a wins and losses perspective.
So we get the FTR with their debut. They get the spike pile driver for the win. And then following this match, we get the Young Bucks. They come out, and this is what everybody's been waiting for. These two teams have gone back and forth on social media over the last couple years, kind of challenging each other, talking about who is truly the best tag team in wrestling. They said they called themselves the best, and then Butcher and Blade attack, and then all the tag teams come out. We get Kenny and Paige out there. So it just kind of shows you there is a ton of talent in this tag team division. If we get some semblance of those three teams with FTR, the Young Bucks, and Omega and Page, that could be a crazy match, or just combinations of those three teams going one-on-one.
The tag division is, I think, it's my favorite part of AEW. It's just insane how stacked that tag division is. Like, we haven't seen Lucha Brothers like in months.
No,
and they're probably my favorite tag team that they had there going for a while.
SCU was huge to start.
SCU, they were the first tag champs.
Yeah,
they weren't even out there. Like you said, Omega and Page were just two guys kind of thrown together, and all of a sudden it's become just an amazing tag team. Like,
they got great chemistry with the drinking and the milk and the stuff. They go back. It's funny. It just fits. Sometimes you put two people together and it works. And if Page was as hot as he is right now, when they started this company, he might have been the first champ. He is hot right now. He's everything he's doing. It's kind of like he's mixing James Storm and Stone Cold together. He's got a little bit of both of them. He's got it right now.
He was the hottest wrestler in the world. I think before this whole thing went down, he would just come to the crowd, just coming to like those hot run-ins. He would just kind of walk in and just fans would go crazy.
Yeah.
And like you said, he was kind of soured on early because he was kind of pushed into that first title match, and he could have been the first ever champion, but he was kind of seen as this kind of bland babyface type guy, and then all of a sudden this character where he just starts drinking, and the favorite thing about him is those little labels on his little title card when he comes out, and they have these little jokes and stuff. But they've all added to this character, and I think just teaming him with Omega, who's kind of like the straight man in that tag, has just been perfect. Like, he's just insanely hot right now.
Yeah, everything with the horse, whenever he comes on and with the horse, people just absolutely love it. He's hot, and he is definitely on the rise right now. We got a backstage little setup with Dustin and QT Marshall. Brandy and Allie were with them, so they're going to be getting a tag team title match next week against Omega and Page. This is something that I like. With AEW too, you talk about we seem like we, for the most part, we get a good look at everybody. Everybody seems like they get rotated in and out, and there's the other show, Dark, that they have a lot of times too, where we get a lot of matches, but they do give TV time and opportunities to a lot of people. And I know that some people don't like that. They think that, there's a lot of folks out there that aren't big stars that are getting TV time, but you have to do that. With a new company, you have to just put these folks on the TV, see who really hits it out of the ballpark, and maybe QT Marshall is a star in the making. I kind of like the stuff that he's got going with Brandy. It's kind of fun. I think there's something with him.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know what you have until you at least try it out, right? And I think that's something AEW has done well. Like, they've built their own kind of stars pretty well. Like, look at a guy like Darby Allin. They built him up really well. I think the biggest kind of example of this is a guy like Sammy Guevara. Like, early on,
unbelievable.
He had that first match ever against Cody, and I remember everything leading up to that TV taping. Like, I wasn't a big Sammy Guevara fan at all, and I think now he's one of my favorite things about the show every week. He's just
completely agree.
Incredible. I thought he was kind of like an annoying type wrestler before, but man, performer-wise, in and outside the ring, he's been just incredible, and I think that he's a perfect example of let's see what we have with these guys before we kind of bring in outside talent and take their spots. Like, we have these young performers, we can build our own stars, and I think they've done a really good job with that with guys like Jungle Boy, Sammy, Darby, and then MJF, really.
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned Jungle Boy too. He was kind of in that same sense. To me, he was just kind of bland, but then you start watching him and he's just a great babyface. He really is. Like, and you don't see many of them in this modern age of wrestling anymore. I think to me, as we continue along through Dynamite, I think the only knock, and it's not even really a knock, I think there's some talent there, but I guess we could say that probably that one of their lower parts of their show and their roster is probably the women's division.
Yeah, I agree.
It's probably not as deep or as strong as, some others, but I really like Britt Baker. I love what she's been doing.
Yeah.
And we had a match. It was Nyla Rose and Penelope Ford with Kip Sabian versus Chris Statlander and Hikaru Shida. Shida is now the new women's champ. And I think the plan was to have Britt Baker be the next champ and maybe take it from Shida. And now Britt Baker is injured, but they've done a great job to continue to let Britt cut promos and build her character up while she's hurt. It almost looks like Penelope Ford is now kind of getting the push that Britt was going to get. She gets the pin here, and she is probably going to be, getting a title shot sometime soon.
Again, another example of changing the course. Like, a guy like Hangman Adam Page was really kind of boring and kind of bland early on. And then they gave this kind of new gimmick, and it worked out. Same with Britt. Like, she was this babyface kind of.
She'd never been a heel in her whole life before this. Yeah.
And she's just another one who's become a star. Like, again, another person you look forward to watching every single week with these vignettes, and just incredible comedic timing with the Tony Schiavone, and just everything about her and that kind of role model gimmick is working. And yeah, I actually really enjoyed the tag match. I thought that tag match,
me too.
Those
Yeah.
performers. Again, I think they're showing growth, and I think people who do complain, I totally get it. Like, they do need a lot more work. A lot of their performers are really green, and they're not really outside performers. They're kind of in-house projects, and I think the more TV time they get, the more in-ring work they get. I mean, they've shown a lot of progress and development so far. And I thought that yesterday's match was actually really good.
I do too. Ford and Statlander. The alien gimmick is a little like, she'll probably drop that at some point, but they're improving. They're getting better. I thought the match at the pay-per-view, which was they had to put together kind of last minute, was really good when they needed to fill in for Britt. So no knocks. I think they're starting to find their footing a little bit too. And then you throw Britt in the mix with this division, and now you've got these four that were out there. You add her. You've got a good little top tier. At least that can, until maybe you bring another new woman or two in at some point. Talk about stars being made. Darby Allin, man, he's got that Jeff Hardy kind of CM Punk-ish.
Yeah.
You combine them, and he's got a really cool little interaction here with Tony Hawk, which was fun. He said he's not medically cleared to wrestle, but Tony Hawk says you don't have to be medically cleared to skate here. So we see a little fun interaction. And again, something that AEW has done well. They get the celebrities to cut little promos online, on social media. Last week there were, I think Dominique Wilkins was cutting a promo on Cody Rhodes winning the title, so they're doing a good job reaching out, getting some of these stars to come in. We saw everything with Tyson over the last few weeks, and this is perfect for Darby Allin. The Tony Hawk thing, it fits his character so great.
Yeah, I think a guy like Darby Allin would only succeed in a promotion like AEW. Like, he's one of those guys, if you stick him in WWE, like, oh God, like that, it's just not going to work.
He's in the cruiserweight division, and he's not even, they don't treat him seriously at all whatsoever. They don't give him any opportunity. This guy's going to be a main eventer in a few years. He really is. He's got, he's another one who Cody does a good job of giving these. You could tell the folks that Cody likes too, like with Sammy, like with Jungle Boy, with Darby. Just giving them a lot of opportunity to show what they've got. And I'm excited for him, man. Like you said, it's a good point. He wouldn't fit in WWE. He might be okay in NXT. Mm-hmm. And then when they pulled him up, we'd be worried about what Vince was going to do with him immediately. So, Darby is definitely a big positive when I tune in each and every week. And then we mentioned the Britt Baker. She continues to to be able to cut vignettes and cut these promos and do stuff from the dentist office and different things. So that's really, really fun. And they're doing a great job. It almost, I don't think she's Austin, but it reminds me of how they were able to keep the build for Stone Cold when he was so hot, even when he had the neck injury after Owen Hart. They had him on Raw every week. Is he going to stun someone? Is he going to punch Vince? What's he going to do? And you don't, it's like the best thing that can possibly happen. You don't lose anything by being out.
No, exactly. And especially in this type of setting, like those vignettes are just as good as matches at this point for Britt.
100%.
And I think she even created a feud with Big Swole last week already from the sidelines, just being a fan. And so she's able to really keep that momentum going, even with being injured. So it speaks volumes to how good she is, how much she's improved with her character. And like even in ring before that, with the whole bloody mouth thing, like it was just gold. Like she's like right now they have something really special in her.
We have a tag match. It was Jake Hager, Santana, and Ortiz from the Inner Circle versus the Best Friends and Orange Cassidy. And I mean, another just star in the making. He's been for a while. Orange Cassidy, everything about him is different, and that's why he stands out. That's why people like him. And I was even reading, some of the stuff from Meltzer that had said that he's like a big draw. Anytime he's on the TV, people don't tune away. He equals ratings right now.
Yeah,
and we end up getting the match here, and Orange Cassidy gets the win, and then afterwards there's a beatdown. I thought this was really, really good. It's a combination of kind of funny but serious. They get the bag of oranges and they go crazy on Orange Cassidy.
No, it was actually pretty brutal. Like I totally get the funny side with the oranges and everything, but those oranges are heavy as hell. And he got cracked open. I'm not sure if it was hard way or if it was a blade thing or not, but Orange has been a guy during this whole pandemic, during this kind of empty arena thing, that I was a little worried about because he is kind of a gimmick where it's so much fan interaction. Like fans love watching him, and I did kind of worry about kind of overexposing him in this type of setting. Like he had that match with Pac at the last pay-per-view, which was incredible. Like that match was awesome, and I think so much of it, what made it so great was because fans had little. I mean, if you weren't watching him on the Indies and stuff like that, you weren't aware of how good he actually is in ring. And if we're seeing it every single week in this type of gimmick, I do kind of worry about it getting a bit watered down. But if you're putting him in a feud with Chris Jericho, I think that's money right there. And I think
I'm so excited about it. And it looks like that's where they're going now. And I'm sure we'll end up getting some sort of a Jericho Cassidy interaction. And I think Cassidy's going to beat him. It's going to be like a quick roll up type thing that'll either keep the feud going or maybe just help elevate Orange Cassidy. He probably gets beat down, 5 or 6 more times through this feud, but I think he's going to get at the end. I think he's going to get the leg up on Jericho. And at this point, Jericho, you can tell he's going to have a ton of fun with something like this and Orange Cassidy. So I'm really looking forward to this one. Orange Cassidy now in a feud with the Inner Circle and with Jericho. We then got Sammy Guevara versus Colt Cabana. And 2 things about this match. We have Colt, who's kind of going through the losing streak gimmick, and now is he going to join the Dark Order? It looks like it, maybe. And we've got a Sammy who's just on the rise, man. I mean, he's
so good. Yeah.
Everything in the last few weeks, in the ring, he's great. I think in this pandemic era, he might have done the most on these shows by the singing of Jericho's song when he's coming to the ring is unbelievable. I think they just did that on accident and they realized how great it was. He would have the signs that he was holding up, which were hilarious. He and then everything in the last few weeks where, they ran him down with the golf cart and then they ran him down with the horse and they were coming after him again. He is a major star. I mean, you give me Guevara, MJF, Jungle Boy, Orange Cassidy, one or two more. You can build an entire, you could build another promotion with this group of really young up and coming guys.
Yeah, like you're right there, that list. And it's a really short list, right? But they've actually done well with every single one of those guys.
Yeah.
And they each have something going. They each are, I mean, again, we're only is the first, not even their first year of the promotion. They've already kind of had all these not stars, but just these performers who are on the way to being stars because they've developed them so well. They've given them good characters. They've given them good feuds. Like every match that they're in does feel important in some way in terms of developing their future. Like that match with Jungle Boy and MJF at the last pay-per-view, it felt like the start of a decade.
A 10-year. It did.
Yeah.
It's like we're going to see these guys in the main event 5 years from now and on TNT like for years to come.
And because they killed it. They were given a chance on the pay-per-view with kind of little to no build, really, that match. And they just were one of the best matches on that card. And yeah, you're like, here you go. You got this insanely good heel, insanely good babyface that both feel natural. Nothing really feels forced with those two in terms of their standing with the fans. And yeah, like I can speak volumes to how good AEW's done with their younger talent.
To close out, or after this, Sammy cuts a promo, and then Matt Hardy comes out. So it looks like they're gonna have maybe a little feud or some kind of a storyline with the two, because Matt Hardy tells Sammy, I like you. I think you got a ton of talent. You got to stay away from Chris Jericho. So that's going to be one of the storylines between them, as Matt is getting an opportunity to do what he wanted to. He gets to play these basically like the faces of Foley. He gets to go through all of his different characters and the Matt facts and everything. And this is, I think, I like this use of Matt Hardy here. It feels like they do a good job, too, of really using their veterans to help get this group of these young guys over, like we've talked about.
Yeah, I can't really pinpoint a match or a beatdown or anything where it felt like they were kind of squashing the younger talent or burying them or anything. And that's actually a really good point. I never really thought of that. You bring in a guy like Hardy, and really he's only elevated Sammy Guevara since he's been there. The whole golf cart thing, like that just rose Sammy's star even higher. And their matches beforehand and the whole that stadium brawl, everything Matt Hardy's kind of done with the Inner Circle has kind of risen them up, actually, and a guy like Sammy G specifically. So yeah, that's a good point. Like it never feels like a Triple H type situation or a WWE situation where those younger talent are kind of feel like they don't have a shot or they're kind of, their careers are getting kind of like outclassed by everyone else. It feels like they're on the verge of becoming stars themselves because of having matches against these guys.
We then got a little interaction outside the building. The main man, Jon Moxley, and Brian Cage, they're going to have a title match at Firefest. They have a little scuffle outside. Cage hits a spine buster on the hood of the car. Taz stops him, and then they power slam Moxley into the back windshield of the car, and they walk off as Moxley is hurt. I mean, from a pure physical athletic standpoint, there are so few people like Brian Cage, because he's not 6'5". He's not the tallest guy in the world either. He's just built like a brick, and he is so athletic. I've had the privilege of actually announcing some of his matches, ring announcing at small indie events where there were 50 people there, and the guy is just unbelievable. And he'll take chances in the ring. He'll try to fly if he can. This is another thing that they've done really well, right? They bring in somebody new, Cage, and they immediately make you feel like he's a star. They treat him important, so we think he's important.
Exactly. First match, he wins that ladder match right there to get the shot against Moxley. Same with Brody Lee. They bring those guys in. They're not really there just as enhancement talent. They're there to be stars. They're there to kind of add credibility to the roster. And another thing with AEW, like you mentioned with Brian Cage, is his size. Like that was one of their criticisms early with AEW, was they're too small. Like I remember early on they had a guy like Billy Gunn in a Royal Rumble, and he just looked like he was a million times bigger than everyone else in the ring. But since then, you get Lance Archer, who, again, another huge guy, but who's crazy athletic. You get Brody Lee, who I've always been a fan of. Again, a guy who could just work. Like, he's big, but he can work. Brian Cage, just a freak. Like you said, like, that guy is crazy athletic, just built like a tank, and they've beefed up their roster for sure. So they listen to criticism. And when, fans say they need help in certain areas, they listen, it sounds like.
the main event was the TNT Championship, the AEW TNT Championship, which Cody has, and there are going to be a lot of matches like this where Cody is he's giving opportunities to people who probably wouldn't get main event title matches in many different spots. This was Mark Queen here, or Mark Henn, who was getting the singles match. We normally know this one as a part of the tag team, and so we get to see him going 15 minutes and showing us a side that we don't normally get to see when he's in the tag team. I don't think many people thought Cody was going to lose this match. We probably don't think he's going to lose a match for a month or so, but that's kind of what this storyline is. I think I think when he loses, it might be to somebody kind of random, like how John Cena used to do this with the U.S. Open Challenge, and I think Daniel Bryan's teasing maybe doing this if he wins the Intercontinental Championship too, being something that every week what you're going to get on AEW. You're going to get like a 10 to 15 minute Cody Rhodes match for the TV title. I like knowing that.
So do I. I think that Cena thing, like you mentioned, that Open US Challenge thing was one of my favorite parts of that kind of era. I loved it. And I remember looking forward to who's he going to be? And there was the Sami Zayn debut.
Sammy is the one that I love.
Yeah, I love that. And then I remember he had a really good match against Zack Ryder. Having guys on the roster who don't usually get that spotlight, but we know can work. I love it. And I think Cody's saying he wants to be that kind of workhorse champion who every week kind of defends that belt against random people you don't know who's going to be. And I kind of like having going up against a guy who's usually a tag team, like a private party member, and letting him see what he could be as a singles guy, and just kind of seeing again what you have in your roster. Like like Jungle Boy showed he can hang in a main event type match on Dynamite, and he's only early 20s. So again, you're giving spotlight to guys, and I think more than anything, like you said, we don't expect Cody to lose these matches, but what it does accomplish, it does give a shine to these younger guys and to this other type of talent. And I'm a big fan of this kind of knowing what's going to be on every week, and I think that's they do that fantastically before the main event every week. They run down next week's card, so you know what's going to be on the card.
WWE used to. That's so easy to do. They used to do that, and the reason why they don't, as we hear, is because Vince changes so many things on the fly.
That's exactly why. Yeah.
Leading up, but how nice it would be, in WWE right now with the two tag the tag titles they have for the women. They've got tag titles on both shows. They've got 2 world championships. There should never be a show that doesn't either have a title match or a number 1 contenders match or something where there are some matches that are worth it. When I watched AEW, it feels like, you said it at the beginning, everything that happens feels like it matters.
It matters. Mm-hmm.
It really does. And, Cody gets the win here, and then afterwards Jake Hager attacks Cody, and that could be a fun match there too. I think a lot of people, this is a good role for Hager, being this enforcer in the inner circle. He doesn't really have to cut any long promos. When he does, sometimes it's kind of goofy and he's kind of playing, playing jokes, or he's being silly. But this he feels like he's been handled and treated better here than he was ever treated in WWF too. Hager, he feels like he's a big deal.
They hide their roster's weaknesses really well.
Just like Heyman used to do. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's influence here. I think with ECW, WCW, New Japan, old territory wrestling. You can see the influences all over this product, whereas WWE is very single-minded. The difference between just the product, the presentation. When's the last time there was a DQ finish in AEW? Where it was every match either ends with a pinfall or a submission. It's very rare that the matches just don't matter, or they get counted out, or just some random kind of BS. Whereas WWE, it doesn't really matter who wins or loses. It doesn't that's not going to proceed the storyline any further. Whereas AEW, again, it's just wrestling at the end of the day, but these wins and losses do kind of matter in terms of getting title chances and stuff like that. And I think that's what I enjoy so much about the product, is it doesn't waste your time.
It doesn't slap you in the face for being a fan and make you feel stupid or make you think. It's they don't. How many times over the last few years in WWE would there be this great storyline starting out and we'd be like, oh, this is kind of cool. Where is this going? And then the next week, it's completely dropped. We don't even hear anything more about it. They treat their fans like they're adults in AEW. They treat them like they're people. And they're not stupid. And I just every Wednesday when I watch, I absolutely love it. It's become my favorite show now to watch. And even on Wednesday, if you're an NXT fan, you get really good wrestling on both of those shows. It's really good. And I watch all the WWF stuff still too. And it just it's a lot different. It's not all bad. There's plenty of good to pick out, but there's so much of it that there ends up being so much bad. Through 3 hours of Monday Night Raw and then another couple hours on SmackDown, and then you have another couple on NXT. So they've got so much time to fill. They can't help but not have everything be the most important. And that's kind of what we want in wrestling. We want it to feel important all the time.
Yeah, that's it. Like, you hit it right there. Like, and WWE, I mean, just look at that roster. It is stacked. Like, it's the most impressive roster I think they've had in forever. On
Friday, there's going to be Daniel Bryan versus AJ Styles for the IC title.
That's ridiculous.
Like, how many years would we have been begging for a match like that in WWF? Yeah.
I mean, Sami Zayn, Nakamura, Cesaro, you could go down the list of the guys they have on that roster, male and female, just in NXT as well. Like, Adam Cole would be the top guy in AEW if he was on AEW. Just, again, it's just a different product, and I'm just happy there's alternatives. And I think that's something AEW has kind of said since the beginning. We just want to be that alternative for fans who kind of become jaded to the WWE style and the way they treat their fans and their build-ups and all that stuff. And I think so far they've delivered. Like, it never feels so. It never feels like they borrow from WWE. It feels different.
That's another key point. You can't try to be WWE and just not have the same amount of money and the same machine that they have and everything behind them. If you're gonna come and try to beat WWE or compete with them or just be a wrestling company, you have to have a different approach. I always applauded like Lucha Underground for trying to be different.
It was fantastic. Yeah.
I loved it. They didn't have the backing or the money, and they didn't have the kind of exposure on TV networks and stuff. But that's the kind of approach. AEW's approach in, hey, we're going to try to be a little bit different. We're going to be a little more serious. These wins are going to matter. They're going to count a little bit. It seems like Cody and the Bucks and Kenny have been like making a list for years of like all the things that would bother them, about WWE, and they're doing the opposite in this company, which is great. It's like do something a little opposite. You're going to get a niche fan base. The fans are very loyal to this company and to this group. I mean, the fans out there, they love AEW. This is not something that is you could fake. They have this unbelievable connection, I think, with the people out there. So I'm really happy too, Alex. This does feel like a golden era and another golden age of wrestling.
And we get New Japan Wrestling coming back next week as well.
With the big tournament. That tournament I saw, what did we get? Ibushi versus Zack Sabre Jr. in the first round. That was the one thing that's jumped off the page to me. So
we're definitely spoiled for sure. And like just to end things there, like you mentioned, you can't beat WWE. Like, it's just it's a corporation. You can't beat them. But the only way to do it is to be different. And I think that's, if you look at all the promotions who kind of stood in the way of WWE in the past, like ECW, the way they were successful is by being hardcore, where other promotions were being hardcore. And WCW is having this kind of bringing in this international talent from Mexico and from Japan, and just having this incredible cruiserweight division that was really revolutionary. Like, we see that in AEW today. And even like TNA with their X division when they were first getting started, that was incredible wrestling with AJ Styles and all those guys. And the reason they failed was they
tried to be WWE.
They brought in Hogan, brought in Ric Flair, brought in all those guys. And as long as AEW learns from those past promotions' mistakes and borrow what was successful, I think they have been, I think they're okay. And again, being on TNT is a huge, huge win for them.
You'll never be able to out WWE the WWE. You're never going to be able to do their thing better than them than they do it. So take a different approach, like AEW has done. I love it. As wrestling fans, we've been really pleased. I see a lot of your tweets on Wednesdays when you're watching along, and a lot of times I'm echoing many of your sentiments too. So it's just fun. We have opportunities. We have options now. We don't just have to be forced on Monday to tune in, and that's the only wrestling we have. As you mentioned, New Japan, and even things that I liked that I thought were kind of cool this year too. The NWA, They had that
Power.
Power.
I loved it too.
Power on YouTube. YouTube. It was just an hour show. It was like an old school feel. That's the kind of different. That was never something you would see on WWE. That was different. That worked. Loved it, and I really appreciate you spending some of your time talking wrestling. So maybe in a few weeks when they do after Fyter Fest, we'll bring you back on and we can recap that show and we can talk a little bit more as we're getting closer to the NBA.
Oh man, I would love it. I would love to come back and talk wrestling, Lakers, whatever with you, man. I really appreciate you having me back on.
Alex, let's give some of your plugs out there again to anyone following you. So where can we find you social media? Let us know about the newsletter. Work-wise, what do you got going on right now? I know it's been just a brutal time for a lot of the a lot of writers out there. We saw The Athletic had unfortunately a big they had to cut a lot of jobs the other day, and I know you've done a lot of stuff for different places, Bleacher Report, Silver Screen and Roll with the Lakers. You do a great job. So if anyone out there is listening and they need someone to cover some basketball, someone to cover some wrestling or whatever, what kind of stuff do you have going on? Where can we find you?
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. So Twitter, Alex M. Regla at Twitter. You can find my tweets there. The Throwdowns, the newsletter, Substack, it's free. Comes out every week. I try to do every week. Lakers, wrestling, all that stuff. And yeah, I'm basically a free agent like a lot of these wrestlers right now that got released. So yeah, if you need any type of writing on any of those things, hit me up on Twitter for sure.
Alex Regla, very good friend of the show. We appreciate Alex talking some basketball and some wrestling with us. Alex, thank you, buddy. You have a great weekend.
Thank you, man. Thanks again.
Folks, don't go anywhere. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to hear from one of our sponsors, and we'll be right back on That's What She Said. Backlash 2020 is coming up this weekend, the next installment of a WWE pay-per-view, and Darin Zoccali is going to help me preview this show. We're going to go through the card, which on paper, Darin, it's not like a stacked, or it's not like a big card. I think they have 7 matches listed. We'd imagine they add maybe 1 or 2. And just kind of before we get into it, we're recording this Thursday night. On Friday night on SmackDown, there is supposed to be an AJ Styles versus Daniel Bryan for the Intercontinental Championship match. I wouldn't be shocked if that either doesn't have a clean finish and ends up having to go on the pay-per-view, or maybe we get a rematch, or the pay-per-view would be much better served having both of those guys on it. Let's say that.
Yeah, I mean, part of me thinks that, McMahon, obviously with the ratings and things like that, he's trying to get some eyes on the shows on Monday and Friday. So I get why they're doing that. But at the same time, you can get the eyes on the Friday show and you could write the story and have a finish so that you bring the eyes back on Sunday, which is probably what they're going to do.
So let's go through this card. For the United States Championship match, we're going to get Apollo Crews versus Andrade. Andrade won a 3-way on Monday night to become the number 1 contender. And they're getting behind Apollo Crews now. This is a guy who's really athletic. He's kind of had a tough time connecting with the audience. He can really go. This feels like the best push that he's been given. And I hope they don't take the title right off him yet and kind of let him go for a little while with it, because the guy can go in the ring. I like seeing Crews out there.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's a good worker. It's probably a good time for him because he doesn't normally get too hot with the crowd, and with there being there no crowd there, that it's probably a good time to try to get him a push. Maybe when the crowd comes back, they'll see if he gets a bit of a warmer response. I don't think they're going to take the belt off him just yet. I like Andrade a great deal. He's also a good worker, although, my goodness, I've seen more than my fill of Selena Vega on Monday night, because that's basically become the Selena Vega variety hour now. But yeah, I think Crews probably retains here. They'll probably find a way to keep that going between him and the faction with Theory and Garza and all that. Not Theory. Theory's over in Rollins' game. I can't keep track. These guys bounce around so much.
Yeah, he just left that. Just the last week or so. But this feels like a good give him a win over Andrade. Give him a win over the former U.S. champ, and a nice victory for Apollo to move forward. I don't know if he's going to have something with Kevin Owens or if that was just maybe a one-off, but I wouldn't mind seeing those two guys go at it. Maybe Owens can help elevate him a little bit there. The tag team championship, the women's tag team titles are going to be defended in a three-way. It's going to be Bayley and Sasha Banks versus Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross versus the Iconics. Your tag team champions right now are Bayley and Sasha. They recently won that. So I believe by doing so, Bayley became the first ever woman to have two WWE titles at the same time. She's the SmackDown Women's Champ, and she's the tag champ right here. I don't know if this is the spot for a switch. We've just been all waiting for the Bayley Sasha turn. I'm sure it's going to eventually happen where, Sasha turns on Bayley and they feud over the title. I don't know if this is too soon for it or not, but it'll be coming at some point.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously where this is heading. I mean, they only kept those two belts on Becky for so long. I don't think they're going to keep both belts on Bayley for that long. But yeah, we know the Bayley and Sasha blow up is coming. If they get a live crowd for SummerSlam, I could see it happening. If not, they'll probably push it off down the road until they get to that point as far as they can. I don't necessarily believe the belts are coming right off them. It wouldn't shock me if the Iconics won this, I guess, based on what they're doing.
And maybe they don't even get pinned. Or, maybe it's like they could lose it to like Alexa and Nikki get pinned, Iconics win, right. And you have something where like it just kind of begins the Bayley Sasha stuff. Maybe there's like a mix up or there's something with them. Yeah.
Yeah, something like I could see, if Bayley hits a finisher on Nikki Cross and, Peyton Royce comes in and throws Bayley off and gets the pin, and Sasha's pissed at Bayley for allowing that to happen, And then the whole thing is, sure, you have your belt. You don't care about the belt we have together. Something like that. I could see that happening. Does it happen now? It seems a little quick, but maybe that's how they want to go about it. So my thinking is Bayley and Sasha retain for now, but I would not be shocked if the Iconics did win.
I think so too. I think it's still Bayley and Sasha for a little while longer. Up next, it's Jeff Hardy versus Sheamus, and Jeff Hardy's been, getting his, redemption story. They had a real, kind of crazy angle a couple weeks ago where Sheamus basically set up Jeff so it looked like he was drinking and it looked like he got into a car accident. I mean, this was some real stuff here. The way the show opened, it was a little bit different. I didn't mind the angle because you got Jeff to come back at the end of the show and get a little bit of his comeuppance, and this should be a pretty good match. I think with Jeff, they keep kind of doing this one more run. That's fine, but kind of get behind him. Let him get maybe a run into a main event shot, and then that's fine with him. But give him one little last run. I feel like this is probably the spot for Jeff to go over.
I agree with you. I think it would defeat the purpose if he doesn't. We talked about art imitating life. That's certainly what's happening with this Jeff Hardy storyline. It can be a little bit uncomfortable knowing, Jeff's past and what he's dealt with, but I think if Jeff goes over here and gets his comeuppance, as you said, and shows that he's on a, quote, straight and even path in terms of the character, I think it could all come together. It wouldn't make much sense for Sheamus to go over here. I think they can have Jeff here win, and then Sheamus goes a separate way, and you could start to, build him up moving forward. But, I agree with you. Give him one more run, maybe put him in an IC title picture. Maybe he can get to a main event at some point in the near future. But it is kind of weird to have Jeff in one spot again and Matt in the other.
Yeah.
But, certainly we've had that before, so I guess it shouldn't come as too much of a surprise. But I expect Jeff to go over here.
We get Asuka versus Nia Jax. I mean, this could be fun. These two, they've kind of been feuding for a little while since before the Money in the Bank. Asuka won the Money in the Bank, and then that ended up being the women's championship because we know Becky relinquished the title because she is now pregnant. So Asuka, Nia Jax. Nia, she's not always the best in the ring and not always the most safe, but against the right opponent, she had a great match with Ronda, and she's had some good matches too in NXT, and I think one of them was with Asuka. So these two do know each other, and they have a little experience to call back on.
They do. That is my concern. Nia does have a little bit of a track record where she's hurt people. Becky obviously being one. Recently at a house show.
I think Kyrie too, right? She tossed Kyrie around.
Yeah, exactly. So, that is a bit of an issue here. Obviously, I expect Asuka to win. They're not going to take the belt off her right away. But, Asuka's kind of gone from crazy lunatic heel spinning in your face to morphing back into the Asuka that everybody seems to, like, even though she's still got the green stuff on her face. But, I don't really know from here where they're going to go with Asuka. I don't know necessarily who she's going to feud with. It'll be interesting to see what they do. They could certainly have a good match. They've done good work together before. But, I fully expect – I would be shocked if Asuka didn't win.
Up next, I'm not a fan, and I love The Miz. I love Morrison. I like they're great together. I'm never a fan of title matches that are like this. When are The Miz and Morrison going to beat Braun Strowman for the title? Like, I just think everybody knows that this is probably not happening, and they've had some okay fun build to this, but it doesn't do anything for Braun to beat the two of them. Even it just doesn't. I don't really think this is going to do a whole lot for either. It could be fun. It's just, I think, a placeholder they needed because they probably were waiting another month before they go back to Braun Strowman against the Fiend. So this is just something that I would have much preferred a different. I mean, give me Sheamus versus Braun Strowman. Yep. You know what I mean? Like that would have been. I'd have been better with that, and someone that Braun can beat in 5 minutes or 6 minutes and go over.
Yeah, they just don't have anything for Braun right now, and it shows. And unfortunately, to be honest with you, that's been a rather common theme with him for a while.
Yep.
You think of
this guy was over like 2 years ago. He was so hot. He was so over. The crowd was every time he came out, they wanted to see what feat of strength he was going to do, what he was going to push over, and they waited, and they didn't even want to put the title on him here. They were forced to because Roman not being around. So you could just tell that Vince is cooled on him quite a bit because they don't really have big plans.
They don't. And I mean, Strowman, his best work, in my opinion, was that stretch that he had with Roman. That was fun stuff.
Great stuff.
That was great stuff that they did together. They played off well together. You could tell, like we talked about in a couple other shows, like people having fun. Number one, they like each other a great deal in real life, and it shows, them working together. But, now they don't have anything for them. And, does the winner of Edge and Orton get elevated to a main event status, depending on what happens with Wyatt / Fiend, maybe? I don't know. But, yeah, this is just kind of like they have to come up with something fun to happen in the match to make this worthwhile. I don't know what that is. Is he going to power slam both of them at the same time? I don't know. But, it's just a product that they don't have anything for him and they don't have any plans. And he's really just a placeholder right now until they figure out what the hell they're going to do with this belt. Yeah,
and I think when Roman's ready to go, whenever that may be, if he's got the title, you just got a built-in feud. Roman can come right back and say, that was supposed to be my shot at WrestleMania, this and that, and we've got a big – so that's fine. I look forward to that point. And even the stuff with The Fiend – was good, and they've got the match part of it was pretty good until they did the Braun was kind of playing head games with him afterwards. It wasn't bad. So those two, like Braun Fiend, Braun Roman, I'm fine with. It's just they obviously seem like they want to wait a little bit before they get back there. And this is just, I think as fans we can kind of feel that this is just a placeholder. Up next, it's Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley. They've done a damn good job with Drew. I think even with the pandemic stuff, he hasn't really suffered a whole ton. He seems like he's still pretty over. He's not like a corny baby face. He's like a good one. To me, this feels like one of the better jobs they've done with a baby face in a while with Drew, all the way back from the Rumble. It's been a really good, 6 months for him. And I got to say, the last 3 weeks of Bobby Lashley has been the best build or the best version of Bobby Lashley that I can remember in a long, long time. I think they've done a good job with both of these two, and I'm interested in watching this match, and I'm kind of curious. Like, I don't think Drew's going to lose here, but they've built Bobby well enough that they've at least put a little doubt in my mind to make me think, yeah, maybe Bobby could win this.
Yeah, I mean, do they have designs on Lashley Lesnar at SummerSlam?
Is that the rumor? Yeah, maybe, and if that is, but
yeah.
I mean, I don't know. That's a match that they've always liked, and they've always kind of had it like earmarked in the back. I just don't know if the crowd would be that into that match, really.
I agree with you.
If there is a crowd, maybe they do that because there is no crowd. Who knows?
Do they take the belt off of Drew after just 2 months? I mean, I don't necessarily know that they're going to do that. What do they have for Drew after this? I don't. And I mean, I know he's got the feud with Andrade's crew, but that's kind of been going on for a while now, and Andrade's in a U.S. program right now. So, I'm not really sure where Drew goes from here. I mean, I'm sure they could
This has got to be the starting point of a feud for a couple months, right? Like maybe MVP gets involved, or something, and then they have a no DQ down the line, or a match where MVP, like something with MVP, or there's the weird stuff with MVP and Lana. Maybe Lana. I feel like this is the starting point for maybe a couple month feud, because you're right. It doesn't. I think they were earmarking Jinder as someone to be a contender, and he got hurt. So now he's out of the picture too. So maybe it's okay. Let's go with McIntyre and Lashley for a couple months, and I'd be fine with that.
Yeah. I mean, I like what they've done the past few months. I think it's the best work that Lashley's done in quite some time. And I think they could certainly have a good match. It'll be a heavy hitting, power versus power match, which with the right guys, those are fun. And if the feud builds for a couple months, I'm fine with that. I think that's probably where we're heading. Drew probably retains here, but if they do build this feud, there are some interesting things that they could do in the future with them.
And then the final match, we're not sure if it'll be the main event. I mean, the way they're building it and talking about it, I'm sure
it better be.
This is just. I feel so bad for these guys with what they've done with this match, and it's like the greatest wrestling match ever between Edge and Randy Orton. Okay, few things. Number one, both of these guys are really good workers, right? Mm-hmm. Really good workers. I think they might be people's personal favorites, but if you were making a list of like the 5 best workers, they're probably not on it, which is so ironic, because in the build up to this, they're having old Hall of Famers cutting these promos on the match, and they've got Ric Flair, Kurt Angle, and Shawn Michaels, who might be 3 of the best workers ever, cutting promos on these 2 guys, and if this is going to be the best, greatest wrestling match ever. And I think everybody knows, or is treating this like a rib, like an inside joke. I almost thought, and I heard they taped the match already. I don't know any results or anything, but I heard it was supposed to be pretty good. I thought that they were setting this up to have it be like Edge comes in and hits 2 spears in a 10-second squash and then ends it. But it feels like they're really trying to go for a good wrestling match. It's just, why do they do this stuff before the match when they crown matches like this? It never works out well.
No, never. I totally agree with you on that. I mean, look, I think Randy Orton is the kind of guy where I think he's got a switch. And if you've watched him long enough, you can tell when the switch is on and when the switch is off with him. When the switch is on, he's really, really good. Not just from his in-ring work, but the character and the things that he does is so much fun at times.
It feels very real. It feels very him. It's like it's Austin, like in that he this is who he is when he gets that, that like you said, he flips that switch. He raises the intensity level.
Yes,
quite a bit.
And I mean, I've seen interviews with him where he says, he has calmed down a bit as he's gotten older, but the Randy Orton character is a lot like Randy Orton was when he was 25 years old or 23 years old, where he would fly off a handle and do wild shit. And I think that's really kept his character a lot of fun. Look, it doesn't hurt that he has the most over finisher in the history of professional wrestling.
Yeah.
But he's up there. When he's on, he's up there. And Edge is good too. But I think pound for pound, I think Orton as his best is at a slightly higher level than Edge. And I love it. Yeah, and I love Edge. Look, these two have done great work together throughout their career. We've seen it in the past. The parts of the match at Mania were good. Obviously, it was way too long. I'm looking forward to it just being a wrestling match. I'm looking forward to it to being 15 to 18 minutes long, and hopefully that's enough. And hopefully it's good. I imagine if you're building it as the greatest wrestling match of all time,
and you're taping it before where you have the option to edit and cut out and redo it if you want. Like that makes it even worse. I feel like we're going to expect even a little bit more from it because we know that now too, you know?
And it better be your main event after doing all of that. It would be really dumb if it's not.
Mm-hmm. Especially when one of the title matches is Strowman versus Miz and Morrison. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, this for sure feels like the match that the show has been built around.
Yes. I mean, if I were booking this, honestly, I might even make McIntyre and Lashley the first match.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And I might even make Braun and the Miz match the cool down before the main event, to be honest with you. Yeah. Because that's got to be some kind of like a joke.
Goofy something, some funny ending where Braun, like you said, he does a slam with the two of them, or he stacks them up on something. But
the one thing I don't know who's going to win this match because
me neither. No, that's a good point.
Yeah, I don't know if this is it. I don't know if there's still going to be another. If there's going to be another blow off, like if there's going to be a third match, I would say
sell or something. Yeah,
I would say that Orton probably wins this. If this is it. Maybe Edge wins it and he goes on to a different program. But at this point, I don't know which direction they're going in. So I like the fact that going into this match, I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other who's going to come out on top.
Yeah, I agree. It really could go either way. Like you said, I think you explained the reasons why. If Edge wins, it's probably going to, ignite him maybe to a title opportunity. I think it probably should. And that would probably get some interest in the title from some of the folks out there. They'd like to see Edge maybe get another run at it. And I mean, even like I'm seeing in my head, which would be kind of fun, something with Edge and Jeff Hardy, even though they're both baby faces, maybe they don't and they're on opposite sides, but man, I would love that with like Jeff getting another run here. But I agree. It's fun when there's a match that we're interested. I'm intrigued in this because I was so disappointed in their Mania match, and it wasn't like it was bad. It was just dragged. It was long. It was way longer than it needed to be. It was kind of slow. So I think they're not stupid. They were on social media. They saw that. They heard, I'm sure, from a lot of the people too. They're both going to probably have a little chip on their shoulder to make this a really good match. So I'm definitely interested in it. I just wish they didn't have to do this damn greatest wrestling match ever, thing. It just, you could see Shawn Michaels when he was doing his little video, he was laughing at it, so much. He's like, greatest wrestling match ever here. No pressure, guys, like.
Good luck, I've had ladder match classics and I've fought Bret Hart 17 times, but this will be the best match ever.
Yeah. I think the three guys you talk to are like rolling their eyes, going like, "I'm a better worker than both of these guys." You know what I mean? But nonetheless, I think there are a couple matches that have some intrigue in them. And the thing about these shows now, during the kind of the pandemic era, they're not the shows that drag anymore. These have been like 2.5 hour, like 3 hour, pretty tight shows. So at least it doesn't feel like if it's like a long night and a waste of a bunch of stuff. It's like they're pretty decent in ring work still. They're quick and they're not like, it doesn't feel like you wasted your whole day if it's a bad show.
Yeah, if this thing stays 7 matches, maybe they add an IC match. This shouldn't be more than 2.5 hours. And I think. I think that they could do that, but not everything has to be WrestleMania, and hopefully WWE continues to, grasp that concept. Speaking of WrestleMania, some exciting news. I was supposed to be in Tampa this year, as you know. So after talking to Amanda, my wife, we have decided that we are going to come out to California for next year.
Awesome. We're going to have to make sure we at least have a night where we go to dinner with the ladies, and that'll be a lot of fun. I look forward to that because, there's a lot of people that I've talked to on social media and stuff, but I've never met in person. But I actually did get to come hang out with you at the Meadowlands one time, which was a lot of fun. And you took me up top, and we sat there. I had a drink. I was covering the races at Monmouth for a few days, so it'd be a blast, man. I look forward to that. Let's mark it down on the calendars far off that we'll have to get together for that for sure. And I'm going to try to go myself. I'm going to plan on going too, especially it being right here. I just don't have to worry about the extra money for travel or hotels or any of that stuff. It just makes a whole lot of sense to go with a couple of my friends. So awesome, man. Great news. I look forward to that.
Yeah. I felt bad, because the kids were so excited for it this year, and look, God willing, that show happens the way it's supposed to happen because, who knows? I know it's 10 months out, but the idea of having 80,000 people in a stadium right now still feels like a decade away.
It does. Yeah, it does.
It does. But, I mean, the plan is, as long as that show's happening, we're going to come out there. We're going to go there. We're going to go to San Diego. We're going to bring the kids. We're going to have a little fun. So I'll definitely keep you posted. I'm looking forward to heading back out to the coast.
Awesome stuff. DZ, thank you for helping me out with this preview. The folks are going to hear your voice again a little bit and just after this because we go through Halloween Havoc 1998. We spent a ton of time on that. Thanks, Andrew. And and then next week we'll be talking about, for those of you who are wrestling fans, our old wrestling rewatch for next week is going to be the Montreal Screwjob, Survivor Series 1997. So we'll have a lot of fun the next week watching that and going through all the old stories and rumors and being able to talk about that next week.
Absolutely. I can't wait for that. That's going to be a lot of fun. One of obviously the biggest stories in wrestling history and a story that really changed the face of wrestling over the next 20 to 25 years. So that's going to be a lot of fun. My Thursday nights are infinitely better since this started, so I appreciate it.
DZ, it's been about 3 hours now with you and I chatting. Go have a drink. Go get some rest. Thank you, buddy, and have a great weekend.
All right, man. Enjoy. Talk to you soon.
Darin Zoccali there. Don't go anywhere, folks. We got plenty more wrestling to discuss on That's What G Said. For the first time, our old wrestling rewatch took us to WCW, and we were at one of the more infamous events in history. It was the match that was being billed as the rematch of the decade. They used many different ways to describe the Hulk Hogan versus Ultimate Warrior rematch at 1998 Halloween Havoc, but they didn't use the actual word of what it really was: garbage. Andrew Champagne, this was your selection. Andrew Champagne, Darin Zoccali joining me like they do each and every week. I will say, I actually had fun watching this show. It's because I knew what was coming in some of the spots and I knew some of the bad spots. There are some 3 or 4 really good matches on this show, but there are a couple just abysmal matches. And when you look on paper, you're talking about a show, Andrew, the final 4 matches of this show: Scott Hall versus Kevin Nash. So we got Diesel versus Razor Ramon, Bret Hart versus Sting, a dream match that people had been, two faces of their previous companies. Sting was the WCW guy forever. Bret was the WWF guy. We got Hogan Warrior and then Goldberg DDP, yet the back half of the show was the crappiest part.
When I picked this show, I have to tell you, yes, part of it was waiting for Darin to go freaking crazy, as he has already promised us off air that he will. But there are some really good parts to this show. And as I mentioned last week, this is everything WCW was. You have legitimate high points. You have Goldberg at the peak of his powers in what is arguably the best match he has ever had, in some people's eyes, by leaps and bounds. You've got the Jericho-Raven match to kick things off. You've got Rick Steiner with a good babyface moment. You have the Cruiserweight division getting a couple of decent matches in there. But you also have the horrible parts of Hogan Warrior, Hall and Nash, the storylines that went into both of those matches, which we'll get into. This was everything that encapsulated WCW, down to an error in communication where, depending on who you believe, anywhere from 15 to 30% of the people that bought the pay-per-view didn't get to see the main event because nobody called a certain pay-per-view provider to say, hey, we're running a little bit long and we need some extra time. This is everything WCW ever was. And if somebody wanted a history of WCW in 3 hours and 15 minutes, I point him to this show.
A microcosm. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. For my money, it's hard for me to say what the worst pay-per-view is in WCW history. I don't know if I could make this one worse than Halloween Havoc 95 with the Yeti and all that nonsense going on and the stuff with Luger and the Giant, which was terrible. The Chamber of Horrors match from 91 is probably one of the worst things you'll ever see in the history of wrestling, where you literally have to put your opponent in an electric chair to win the match. But this, I mean, I really, in all honesty, joking aside, I really struggled to make it through this because
it's long too.
It is. The Jericho Raven match is good, although it brings back memories of them completely underutilizing Jericho and even underutilizing Raven to the point where he's jobbing to Jericho, and Raven was in the midst of like a losing streak. And after this match, I don't think we see him for a while. The Bret Hart character is just not what Bret Hart.
He is just awful. This version of Bret is so he doesn't care and nobody cares. That's the problem. That you get that sense just too much in the WCW shows that the main event guys don't care.
Nope. And I know Bret's not happy. A Bret Sting match in the early '90s, even mid '90s, would have been phenomenal. These two at this point, it's not the same.
And Sting at this point too had some issues going on. I think with alcohol and some stuff that he was like. You remember, this is the same Sting who less than a year before this was supposed to be the savior, the guy that is going to come and disband the NWO. It seems so weird that Sting is coming out to NWO music. He's part of the Wolfpack. Like, they completely screwed that whole thing up with Sting at Starrcade. Remember, Bret was on Sting's side not even a year ago. It just, there were some positives to take in the show for sure. But there are just so many things that Andrew said that just feel WCW.
It's hard to find a pay-per-view where everything's bad. I mean,
no, you're right.
It's hard to find that. But I mean, to be honest with you, if I remove Goldberg and DDP, which I agree, we will get into it. I thought it was Goldberg's best match ever by a country mile.
Oh yeah.
If you remove that, in my opinion, the best overall match on the card is the Disco Inferno Guerrero match. It's a good match. Like that for me, in terms of in-ring wrestling and what they do, that was a damn good match. But it's just, and I keep thinking, like, can you imagine, and I don't really remember it, but because this pay-per-view left me so flat, the difference between, like, having this pay-per-view end live with Hogan Warrior versus ending with Goldberg and DDP. Like, I mean, the difference between the point of time where the Warrior match ended and the Goldberg match ended, and how you feel after each of those two matches is like night and day. It really is.
I'm going to be devil's advocate a lot over the next hour and a half or so, and I got to tell you guys, I'm really looking forward to it.
Let's get into the show right away. So this is Halloween Havoc 1998. This is the return of the Ultimate Warrior. I say return. He's never really been in this version of WCW, but he's coming back to play with some of his old friends. And mainly, honestly, the whole reason why the Warrior's back is to give Hogan the win. It really is. It was because at this point, Hogan's got a lot of ego going on. He's bringing a lot of wrestlers that he and let's be honest, they did great business and they had a great match. So for Hogan to think that bringing Warrior back in would be, it doesn't seem like it's a bad idea on paper. The guys, they did a great job. That was back in 1990. The crowd didn't really want to root for either one of them. They really didn't. They didn't present the Warrior great, and Hogan was just the bad guy Hollywood Hogan. So this was. Yeah, it was weird for this to be like the main build when you have this awesome main event match and the best match that Goldberg's ever had, that DDP just gets a really good match out of him. So we get the intro, which is in slow-mo. They show Hogan Warrior, Goldberg DDP, Nash Hall, building up them as a couple of the major matches on the show. One thing I will say, I thought the setting is awesome. I love that look with the gargoyle and the pumpkins and the smoke everywhere. You know it's Halloween Havoc. They would cut some of when they would cut some of the promos that they would have, they'd be standing right in front of that gargoyle, like with his hands over the pumpkin. So I like the look of this. It felt like you're at Universal Studios.
Yeah, no, they did have good good settings and good backdrops and things like that for the pay-per-views. Halloween Havoc, they usually came up with cool stuff in terms of what it looked like.
Some years they would have the graves and things like that. Yeah,
and I mean, this was after. I do miss when they used to spin the wheel for the
that
the
was
main
cool.
match. It was going to be coal miners glove match and Texas death match and all that stuff. But the one thing that if we're going to compare WWE and WCW a little bit, the stark contrast in terms of like the opening, the opening roll-in and just the open in general and the quality of the production quality.
Their video packages is off for a company that's a TV network, Andrew, and they got a lot of money behind them. And we just talk about how great the setting looks. It's almost like they felt forced with a gun to their head, like, you better put a package together before some of these matches, but make it as crappy as possible.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's jarring because these are the same guys that put together the NWO's videos in 96 and 97 when nobody else was doing anything like that at the time. Vince took that and used some of that same format to do DX's stuff, and that still made him millions of dollars. To go from those videos with this presentation is being paid for by the New World Order to the preceding presentation was paid for by the New World Order. The great stuff that they did, the same people 2 years later are doing this.
Yeah. It's one thing where we're nowadays too, a lot of people are hard on WWE because, their product at the moment is not the best. It's not the best it's ever been, but they've always been so damn good with these promo packages and their build up packages. Like, I genuinely would put them up with any organization in the world the way they do them. I mean, they're incredible. And that's a great point, Darin, to like the real stark contrast between the two of them. And then one more thing that's kind of sad, a little bit of a bummer about this show. We got Tony Schiavone, we got Bobby the Brain, we got Mike Tenay, but you can tell right away we get a few of Bobby's good moments throughout the show. He has a couple good lines and stuff, but he doesn't look great right away. You could tell.
No.
He just doesn't look good. And there were a lot of rumors of him drinking a ton. He was not very happy working here. He, a lot of the stuff that I read said that he almost went into a depression after leaving WWF. Like, he was like such a WWF guy, loved Vince, the company, and he was very sad that he wasn't going to be able to be a part of that anymore. And he ends up showing up here, and he's getting big money, but what's weird about this too, Darin, is he's not really a heel anymore because he hates the NWO.
Yes.
So he's not ever, anytime there's an NWO match going on, he's not rooting for the bad guys. And now that's what Bobby does so well.
Yeah, it's really difficult to, he does have a couple of funny lines. One that I picked up that's real funny. But, it's hard when we watch those pay-per-views from the late 80s or early 90s and to hear him at the top of his game. And then you see a pay-per-view like this, and his character is different. So because his character is different, the presentation of his viewpoints are different. They're not as funny.
It's very
They're
bland.
Not sarcastic. Yeah. It takes away from the show because obviously listening to Bobby is one of the highlights of a pay-per-view is that you're going to be entertained by just the quips throughout the show. This is and I'm not going to say he's terrible because it's not, but it's just a far cry from when Bobby was at his best.
Now, there are a couple of reasons for this. Heenan, when he went into WCW, actually attacked his job with a lot of enthusiasm in the early years. Mm-hmm. He had a couple of creative ideas that he actually went and pitched to Eric Bischoff. But Eric Bischoff said about the 4 worst words that you could say to Bobby Heenan: "You're just an announcer."
Yeah.
And at that point, the light went off. You don't do that. And as all of us can attest, you don't stifle
that's the word I was just going to say.
That want to do something and want to do it well and want to help the people around them. That's what Bischoff did, and he failed miserably. The other part of this is going back, and you can hear this in a number of different spots. Heenan and Schiavone did not like each other.
No, that's a good point.
Heenan and Tenay got along really well, and they respected one another. But Heenan and Schiavone had legitimate heat when they were working together in the 90s.
Yeah.
Some of that was stemming to when Gorilla Monsoon passed away, and Schiavone didn't want a tribute to Gorilla on the air, and Heenan had to fight for it.
Yeah.
There were some things that Schiavone could have been blamed for. There were some things that maybe Heenan could have been blamed for. Whatever it is specifically is lost to history, but you can hear the tension between the two of them in a number of spots on this show, and we'll see it as we go through.
Okay, we're going to get started with Halloween Havoc 1998. So we kicked things off, talked about the commentary team. Tony Schiavone, Bobby the Brain, Mike Tenay, they run down the card. And the Nitro Girls right off the bat. This is another thing, right? Knowing what we know, that this show went over like 15 minutes, longer than what it was supposed to be on pay-per-view. When you know that, and you go back through this and you see how much crap like this, I don't mean crap like the girls out there, but it's like, we needed the Nitro Girls 4 times on the show?
Gino, are you complaining about the Nitro Girls?
Hey, you know what? I wrote to the
Well, Darin, you're just being a grouch for this show, and I'm going to love it. In this instance, I think you're wrong. On a serious note, though, yeah, there are a number of instances on this show where I'm going to bring up timestamps just to show how much time passes for certain segments, and you didn't need to cut much. Just a couple minutes here, a couple of minutes there, 30 seconds here and there.
On a few matches.
Had the problem.
Or we'll get to there too, like the stuff after the Brett Sting match. It takes forever for Sting to get down. When Brett gets announced, he takes like 2 minutes before he even walks out. Like his music is playing forever. It was almost like, hey, Brett, you're on. Brett, you're on. Like he's just like in the back of the, backstage. Just doesn't give a crap at all. I think I mentioned somewhere here, like, come on, get these girls off of my TV. I want my pre-orchestrated wrestling with these men in their underwear, like something like that. But that's kind of at the point, like, I'm fine with them once or twice. And they actually mentioned this is the first time they're on the pay-per-view. They've never been on the pay-per-views, and I don't think they were on pay-per-views very often after this. I much prefer the Nitro Girls than like a concert at a show, right? You can bring them in between things or commercial break, entertain the crowd a little bit, and they're not like, you don't have to build really anything for them. It just felt like it was, knowing what we know about this show running over so long, that was an easy part that they could have cut. One thing to mention, I believe Shawn Michaels' future wife, one of those Nitro Girls.
Whisper.
Out there. Yeah. So that's the woman who changed his life, and who she's probably the reason why he's around here today still, to be completely honest, because Shawn was not, at this point, Shawn's retired now, and we don't see him back in the ring for a couple years on the other side, on the WWF side of things. We get Mean Gene with Rick Steiner, and they're cutting a promo. And then here, Rick, and then is funny here, the Scott one later. I just can't wait till we get to that promo. But Rick says, tonight, it's the Hound and the Pound, and I'm going to get down. And you know what I will say? This crowd loved them some Rick Steiner, man. He was hot. I think a lot of it has to do with whoever's going against the NWO is pretty hot in their spots, but they were damn hot for Rick Steiner here, Andrew.
They were. The crowd was scorching hot for this guy. The problem with this segment, and I hesitate to use the term problem, Buff Bagwell comes out, and we'll get into the Bagwell backstory in a bit. There is a backstory here, and how WCW screwed this up, I shouldn't say surprising because of everything else they screwed up, but they screwed this up pretty good. Bagwell comes out, and if you could imagine what a 1998 outfit looks like, it would be this. It is an oversized FUBU jersey and a beret and sunglasses indoors.
He's doing his goofy little dance with the arms the other way and stuff too. Yeah. It's just, oh yeah.
And it doesn't help that Bagwell is just not a face at all whatsoever. He puts no effort into being genuine or sincere when,
and everybody can smell it and sniff it. The crowd, the commentators, everyone.
Now, they pay it off reasonably well later, and we'll get to that. But you can see where everything is going as it's happening. It's almost insulting to the audience. Now, the audience is always going to be in on the joke to a certain extent, but this just made it seem like WCW assumed his audience was pretty stupid.
Yeah, and the conversation between the two of them feels a little forced. By the way, Buff Bagwell, if Tommy Dreamer and George Michael got together and had a kid, Would it not be Buff Bagwell?
Would
That's a
need
good one.
steroids involved. I
That's a
don't
good
think
one.
Tommy Dreamer's muscular enough on his own to pass down those genes.
But I mean, you combine the two of them and add some roids, and you get Buff Bagwell. But yeah, I mean, the conversation is kind of forced, and it's awkward when they're trying to like give each other a pound or do whatever it is that they're doing. And everybody and their mother knows that there's no way Bagwell is on this guy's side,
including Judy Bagwell. Let's lump her into this.
Right? Yeah, no, of course. You know, she's the mastermind behind all of it, apparently. But I mean, it's almost like insulting your intelligence that they're like trying to like force the story when everybody knows it's complete bullshit. So right off the bat, you get that, and I'm already aggravated because I'm like, all right, well, you know, I didn't believe it when I saw it the first time, and now watching it again, it's even dumber to have this guy out there. Oh no, man, look in my eyes, man. Look in my eyes.
And the worst
shot, man. Look in my eyes. Give me a break.
And the worst part is, this is one of those times where I'm going to trot out the timestamp. After this promo is over, we have gone 8 minutes and 20 seconds without a match.
Nothing. We could have had a whole match.
In-ring action.
We could have had a match or
8
two.
minutes and 20 seconds.
Nothing. Yeah, absolutely nothing. And it wasn't even, like you said, we're not even talking about great video packages to build up the show here and to set the scene for the night. We're just talking about like pretty much garbage for the most part. Do you fellas know what Buff Bagwell does nowadays?
I do, and if there are any children out there, I'm going to give the parents 3 seconds, an opportunity to leave and usher them out the room. 1, 2, 3. He sells himself for companionship.
He is a male prostitute. He's an escort for Cowboys for Angels. And if you look him up, he doesn't pretend like he's somebody else. He talks about how he was, a star in WCW and all this stuff. And yeah, Buff Bagwell, who was a male stripper before some of his WCW days, and then after his WCW days, he is now a prostitute. So there's that. We go to Raven versus Chris Jericho for the TV title. Man, isn't it amazing? Chris Jericho on TNT 22 years ago. Yeah. I mean, he's on TNT now. How freaking young he looks and thin, but the guy, he had it then. He's had it forever. Just the talent, he's hilarious here. He's really funny. Raven takes the mic. He's been on a losing streak. He said, it's not his fault. What about me? What about Raven? He said, this is great. He doesn't want to wrestle, even though he's just been given a TV title match in the middle of his losing streak. It's like, you don't want a shot for the title. Jericho comes on. He gets the mic and he says, I don't care, but all the Jericho-holics in Las Vegas came to see me wrestle because Jericho equals buy rates, butts in the seats, and rock and roll, which I thought was pretty funny. He said he's bummed he doesn't get to wrestle Raven, the leader of the flock, the dumbest group of idiots on the planet. So we just see the great Jericho shine at this moment. And actually, right before this, Jericho was involved in a really fun back and forth with Goldberg that Goldberg and Bischoff end up nixing because they didn't think Jericho was like a big enough star to be in a feud with Goldberg. But the crowd was really into it, Andrew, and you can see this. Jericho was like, right when he came in, he's the white meat baby face, and then he became like the real whiny, cry, complain guy. And here he's almost turned completely into cool heel.
This is Y2J Jericho version 1.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, if you cover your eyes and just know it's a Jericho promo, you could see this being early WWF Jericho right after he came over, because it's the same general kind of bullet points. Now, both of these guys could obviously go, both on the mic and in the ring. Raven was making the most out of a horrible situation. He had just come off of a good run with the U.S. title and with Raven's flock. He had a really fun match with Goldberg that sort of launched Goldberg up into the next level. Raven did everything he could for Goldberg. That's a hidden gem on one of the old Nitros if you can find it. Jericho is Jericho, obviously. And I really like this match.
Me too.
I thought this was a fun opener. It's a hidden gem, and I said that last week.
Fast pace. Yeah.
It's not long, but there are no rest holds. Everything serves a purpose, and these guys are bumping their butts off for one another trying to tell the story. One of the big bumps is Jericho goes flying off the apron, and he goes straight into the guardrail, and it looks fierce. It looks really, really bad from here. Raven gets a couple of really good near falls near the end of the match. They do a sequence with the exposed turnbuckle, which I really like. They didn't rely on it as a crutch. They said, okay, we have this, but we're going to add some stuff into it. It wasn't as simple as the heel taking off the turnbuckle and sending somebody into it. They added a lot of cool wrinkles to it. Canyon does a run-in that's a little bit quizzical. I guess they were trying to do something with him and Raven. In retrospect, I don't remember a whole heck of a lot, but Jericho runs into him, counters the even flow into the Lion Tamer, gets the tap out. And I thought this was a darn fun opener that showed both guys caring about what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And when you got motivated Raven, you got some really good stuff. We didn't see Raven again for another 6 months after this, and he comes back in a storyline where it turns out he's been camping at his mother's mansion, and it turns out he's a spoiled little rich kid, and those are actually some pretty cool videos, and you could find them.
Yeah, it was supposed to be something with Piper, too. It was supposed to be like, because Piper was kind of a mentor to him, and it was supposed to end, lead to something with him and Piper. It was kind of fun after, because we hear that everything that he's been saying forever has been BS. You know, he really is a spoiled guy, and he didn't have all a troubled, hardship growing up and everything. So, as far as in-ring quality, Darin, on this show, there's only a few matches that have pretty good in-ring work. This was one of them. It was a little bit weird with some of the psychology and the Raven not wanting to, wrestle for the title stuff. Some things were a little off there, but, I mean, this was one of the better spots on the show for sure.
It is. It's a fun match. I enjoyed it. Obviously, everything with Jericho I'm going to enjoy. If you do watch the match closely, it's 85% Jericho and 15% Raven in terms of who's carrying the match. I mean, even the pop-up powerbomb, Jericho basically jumps right into, leaps up and jumps onto Raven's shoulders, and Raven just kind of drops him on his back. I mean, so Jericho's doing the lion's share of the work here, and he's making Raven look good, and it's a fun match, and I enjoyed it. Couple things outside the match that I took away. Number one of the things I forgot with WCW, it's like the wrestlers' entrance music it's completely insignificant. It's something that always bothered me.
It is.
In WCW.
It is, and I'll tell you more after.
Yeah, it's weird to me because in WWE. Music dropping creates pops. And, they've had some of obviously the best themes. You talk about Edge's theme and Orton's theme and, Warrior back in the day and, even the guitar riff of Bret Hart and obviously Hogan and Macho and all the way down the line. Music was such a huge part and is such a huge part of what WWE does. And with WCW, it's almost like you have to strain to hear the entrance music.
Yep.
And that always bothered me, and I'll let Andrew pick up on that in a minute. But the other thing was that always drove me nuts about WCW. Can you put a graphic on the apron of the ring instead of it just being the bland blue?
Yeah.
I know you got the monster Halloween Havoc thing in the ring, but can you put a nice ring apron up that doesn't look like it's a Thursday night house show? So yeah, those two things off the top just struck back at me and go, oh yeah, these are two things that annoyed me about WCW. But yes, it's a good match. It's fun. The spot going into the railing was cool. Raven hits a kind of a jump drop kick while catapulting off the stairs outside. That was cool. There's a cool sequence with the pop-up powerbomb into the slingshot to another move. And back then when Jericho used to, it was called the Lion Tamer before he became known as the Walls of Jericho. When he used to kind of stand up on that hold instead of just sitting down into a Boston Crab, I always thought it looked kind of cool. It looked it was kind of like a modified crab because he would almost be standing straight upright, and it looked a lot more painful, even though it probably wasn't. But the look that it gave, I thought was cool. But I watched this and I say to myself, yeah, but it reminds me, Jericho's underutilized. He's going to lose the TV title in a couple of weeks to Conan. He goes into some ridiculous feud with Perry Saturn where they have all these kinds of weird matches with crazy rules. And I think, if I remember correctly, at Super Brawl, don't they have a match where the loser has to wrestle in a dress or something like that?
Yes. Yes.
I mean, it gets really, really weird. And then obviously Jericho's in WWE a few months later. So while I enjoyed the match, I just remember this period of time wanting WCW to do so much more with Jericho than they did.
Going back to the music, Jericho tells the story in his book about how at every prior stop in his career, in Japan, in Canada, in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, over in Europe, he took great care to figure out the entrance music for him that embodied the work that he was going to be doing. The first day he comes into WCW and asks about his entrance music, some producer talks to another producer, and the producer goes, "Give him Basketball Highlights 12. That's what he got.
Wow.
Now, WCW did know the value of entrance music because they were paying Jimi Hendrix $100,000 a year for the right to use Voodoo Child for Hogan.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that it would matter so much for some people, Hogan,
Yep.
and not matter at all for pretty much anybody else, it's jarring. It's not shocking because, again, we know about WCW and everything that went down as far as their decline, but it's one of those things that really stops and makes you wonder what their priorities were.
There's one cool spot at the end of this match that I love because it's a spot that Jericho has done his whole life and he still does. When he's got somebody in the submission or like the Lion Tamer, Walls of Jericho, whatever, and they get to the rope, and he acts like he doesn't know they got to the rope, and like the ref, and so when the ref, tells him to stop to hold, he always will hold his hands up like he won, and kind of start celebrating. And it's just crazy because I literally saw him do this a week ago on, 23 years later. And he did the same thing here, which is funny. And then he realizes he doesn't win and he gets mad and he starts stomping like a little kid and jumping up and down. But he actually kicked out of Raven's DDT finisher too. And then one thing that we see and we end up seeing, and you could tell poor Tony Schiavone, he's just so fed up with all the low blows, throughout the show. And the fact that like we just get guys cheating so blatantly in front of the referee all throughout, each and every match.
These
and
referees are terrible, man.
God, they're bad. They're bad. I mean, they're just awful. They're like the NFL.
There's like 15 low blows in this paper.
Honestly.
I mean, I'm not exaggerating.
No, you're not.
And there's one match that there's like the Steiner, there's like 5.
Like everybody gets low blowed in a different, or like does a different low blow. And then it just loses any impact that it has because guys are just kicking out right afterwards and everything too. It's just, it doesn't do anything for you here. So I took a lot of positives out of that, and I just love seeing Jericho at this age when he's so quick and spry. But it also bums me out a little bit, like you said, Darin, because we see Jericho and Eddie Guerrero and some of these guys not treated the way they should, and that's why they went over to the WWFE and they became bigger stars there. Another thing we could have cut from time. Here comes Hollywood Hogan and Bischoff.
Oh, here we go, Darin.
It's the worst promo I've ever seen in my life.
And I was going to say the same. This is very similar. I mean, so the angle is that Hogan's beat everybody but the Warrior. It's Hogan and Bischoff. They cut a promo. The great thing about this is the backdrop. They're right in front of the Halloween Havoc, the sign and the gargoyle and the pumpkin. That looks great. Everything Hogan's saying is crap. And the problem with Hulk Hogan at this time, Andrew, was we're already 2 and almost a half years into heel Hulk Hogan now. So he's not hot anymore. The crowd just doesn't like this guy. They're just kind of fed up with this guy. We've seen this heel version of him now for a few years. The babyface version of Hogan was one that a lot of the fans were already getting tired over, And so this isn't even like the heat that he had in 96 and 97. And I'll say like all the way up to that Starrcade match with Sting, he had damn good heat. But like after that, he just becomes, it's almost like the go away heat. Like he's trying to be like an old guy who's trying to act cool, but he's not really cool. He's one of those like hanging on with the NWO. And the NWO Black and White is Vincent, Scott Norton, Stevie Ray, Hogan. We're not even talking like the A-listers of the NWO.
You've got the Giant and Scott Steiner in there too.
Yeah, that's a
you're
good point.
Absolutely right. All of the bums went to the NWO Black and White brand, and the appeal of Hollywood Hogan in 96, 97 is this guy has gotten some really big name guys to back him up, and if you want to get to him, you had to get through everybody else. That was part of his heat. That's gone. With the advent of the NWO Wolfpack, which was a good idea in some respects, lousy idea in others, and we'll talk about that as we go along. That aspect of Hogan's appeal was gone, and he looked a lot more like just another old guy. Now, this promo. Oh, boy. So the backstory going into Halloween Havoc is Hogan is so ruthless. He is so ruthless that he attacks his nephew, Horace, because we've never seen a family member versus family member storyline in wrestling at all ever. This is uncharted territory for anybody. And Hogan hits Horace with a steel chair. They make a big deal out of the fact that Horace needs staples in his head, and Hogan comes out and takes pride in that. Now, if this was a 30-second throwaway promo, fine and dandy. He goes on for what seems like an eternity. And after he's done with his promo, he sticks around and he's talking to the hard camera for another couple of minutes. And my all-time favorite Hulk Hogan line comes here. The line goes, when he's talking about the Warrior, I'm going to rip his heart out and bury him in a toxic waste dump. Why? Why did we need any of this? And I'm going to do another timestamp here. 28 minutes into the show, and we've seen one match.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the whole thing behind this match is Hogan's facing the guy that he's never beat. Why? Like, what is the deal with this Horace angle? Like, why does that even have to happen?
Where does it come from? It's got nothing. I don't understand it at all.
And not only does the angle happen, but they play the video back of it. Hogan's talking about it. I mean, you bring Warrior out when this whole thing starts, and he talks about it, and we make fun of that Warrior promo because it's an hour or two, and not an hour, but it's minutes and minutes too long. But the first couple of minutes of that, yes. But the first couple of minutes of that promo
are the best promo that Warrior's ever cut.
Yeah, good. He comes out and says stuff like, you've beaten savages and you've beaten giants, but you've never beaten a warrior. It's a good line. That's the theme. They could have done so much with that here. They could have knocked down fourth walls. They could have buried WWE and talking about what they were thinking back then. And they could have done a million things with that line and with this promo and the promos leading up to it. They could have had a field day when it came to old WWE booking, and he could have come out and said, I was ready for Hollywood back then, brother. That's the only reason you got the strap back in 90. I mean, they could have done a million things. And instead, I beat up my little nephew and he had staples in his head. And now I'm going to yell for 3 minutes, and then I'm going to taunt the camera for 2 more minutes and just keep talking as if somebody is talking in my ear, telling me to vamp because they're having a hard time cutting to wherever they need to go. I mean, it was complete dog shit.
It is literally, when you watch the show, like, it feels like the opposite of what reality was. It feels like people are telling people to fill in spots. It's almost like somebody's telling Hogan, hey, we got to get through 5 minutes right here, so fill this time. Instead of, we have a full show with 12 matches carded, 2 of which were just added the day of the show. Mm-hmm. It's just goes to show you, as Andrew mentioned at the very beginning, there's no checks and balances. There's nobody talking to each other. For as much as all of us don't, agree with some of Vince's storylines, and maybe he's a little out of date now with the way he does things, and sometimes he buries people here and there, sure, whatever he does, the organization and everything on WWE is always just smooth. Like, you never even think about anything like that. You don't think about, it's not even there's not even a thought that comes into your mind about them running long or short or the timing being off or anything like that. They're a well-oiled machine with all that stuff. And you compare it to this company.
Yeah. Vince was out of touch back then. Well, in 96, 97 with the characters and the cartoon characters and having, your characters were guys with occupations like, garbage men and pig farmers. I mean, that was terrible, but that's creative. The actual process of putting together the show, was nothing like what we're seeing here. And by the way, one other thing with Hogan, dude was back on the sauce at this point.
Yeah, you can tell.
Oh man, he is bursting at the seams. No question about it.
This was a big night for him. He wanted to get his win back. This is one of the only people in wrestling that he couldn't get his win. He didn't go over clean, leading up to this. So, just really unnecessary stuff from Hogan here. Just rambling. We're going to wipe the paint off the Warrior's face and leave him laying is another line that he said. This next match, I didn't mind coming up. It was Ming versus Wrath. So for those of you WWF fans, we have King Haku versus Adam Bomb. And Wrath looks great. I mean, he looks massive. He looks big. He looks like a star. Tenay said that he's 10'8" or 10'8", 6'8" at this point.
He looks like Drew McIntyre from behind here.
Yeah.
He's got that kind of look.
Yeah, Ming's a little older here. I mean, we've been talking about Haku for a while. We saw him in the early WrestleMania era of the WWF. And then at this point, it was kind of cool. Tony Schiavone welcomes Jason Giambi and Matt Stairs, among a few others that are in the audience there. This match was fine. It was only 4 minutes. Yep, I know Andrew's got a couple big men in here who can move. I have no problem with that. They moved pretty quick early on. Both guys. One thing that I think really helps this match, the commentary. They treat both of these guys like they're stars. They talk about Ming's always kind of had that. Oh, he's one of the baddest guys in the locker room, and he can beat anyone. And then they were talking. You could tell they were high on Wrath, and they were building him up a little bit. He hits the meltdown, which was pretty impressive to do on a guy like Ming, who was pretty big. I have no problem with this match, Andrew.
Yeah, and you guys hit it. Two big men that can move. Everybody out there, drink. Now, Wrath at this point was legitimately over.
Yes.
Wrath was being positioned as an upper mid-card babyface, a guy who carried himself like he genuinely mattered, cool finishing move, and was doing a lot of stuff guys his size would never try to do. He hits a cannonball off the apron. No 6'8" guy was doing that in 1998. He hits a flying lariat onto Ming. And Ming was a guy that could work as well. People forget this, but he has a good, long career with a good body of work. This was a guy who did a lot of good work in Japan. Chris Jericho raves about some of the matches that he and Ming had in the 90s over in WAR over in Japan, and those are good matches. Now, the problem here isn't this match. I like this match for what it was. It was a 4-minute match designed to get Wrath and the Meltdown over. Mission accomplished. Hooray. The problem came after this match because Kevin Nash, in his rush to get ready for Goldberg, decided, need to go over Wrath.
Yep.
Sorry, Wrath. And Wrath was never the same. After that, as a singles act, he was done. He latched on with Bryan Adams and formed Chronic. They had a little bit of a run, and then they went to WWE after WCW was bought out and wound up being part of one of the worst tag matches you will ever hope to see. Don't worry, guys. I will never pick that pay-per-view. I promise you that will never be a pay-per-view I pick for us to watch, because watching that match is hazardous to your health. And ultimately, Wrath, Adam Bomb, Brian Clark, whatever you want to call him, he didn't get a fair shake. If he was able to continue on that trajectory, I don't know if he ever would have been a legitimate main event type guy, but he could have been a legitimate upper mid-card main event guy that you throw into main event tag matches and people buy it. WCW missed the boat on this guy.
Yeah. By the way, the tag match you're talking about, was that the Unforgiven one against the Brothers of Destruction?
Yes, it was.
They go hard way on him, yeah.
This is really unfortunate here for Wrath, aka Brian Clark, because he's like you said, he's over here. I mean, he gets a pop when he gets the win here. The move is a good move. He even hits there's an Uranagi in here that's pretty sick, and I mean, it's a good match. It does what it's supposed to do, and it's enjoyable. It's not slow. It's good paced. But like you said, after this, he loses to Nash. He ends up going in a feud with Bigelow. He loses to Bigelow to completely destroy him. And then he ends up tearing his ACL, and he's out for about a year. And then when he comes back, like you said, they put him with Bryan Adams. And if you don't know who Bryan Adams is, that's Crush from WWE, and that's pretty much, the downfall of his career. But at this point, his trajectory is pointed upward, and
huge. This is the hottest point of his whole career right here. Like this is like the best for him, and you feel like you could see the sky is the limit. He was someone that the WWF, I think Vince had promised an IC title run, back at one point, and then plans change, and he was promised, as Andrew said, to become like a main, at least an upper mid Carter. They were getting the rocket behind him. It just Kevin Nash got in the way.
Yeah. And that's another part of the show, and it has nothing to do with this match in particular, but like Jericho, it's another part of the show that bothers me, just because I know that pretty much after this moment, this is the end for Red, and it shouldn't have been. And it's another part of the show that poisons the show for me, because I know for another guy that could have been more than decent and could have had a really good run there for a couple of years, just gets completely buried after this, and it's another part of the show that's just unfortunate.
For sure. And
Go ahead,
really
Andrew.
quick, that's one of the things in these rewatches that jumps out. Some of these shows, if you watch them in a vacuum, are far better than if you watch them knowing
the sum of all the parts
and everything that went in after. If you're watching Halloween Havoc 1998 in a vacuum, not knowing anything about WCW going in, with the exception of the Hogan Warrior match and another match that we'll talk about later that I honestly think is a worse watch than that one, not a worse match, but a worse watch, you're going to come away legitimately entertained. However, if you know the backstories going in and you know the aftermath of what's coming out, it's going to leave a bad taste in your mouth.
Up next, it's Lee Marshall, a.k.a. Tony the Tiger. They're great. Lee Marshall backstage with Kidman, and just talking about how he faces the winner of Disco Inferno and Juventud. Doing the Disco, comes out doing his best John Travolta. And this is one of the Bobby good lines when they announce Juventud from the Federal District of Mexico. And he says, does that mean he wears those overalls and picks up stuff on the highway with those other guys? And then Tony says, Bobby always runs down people. And Bobby says, I haven't even driven since we got to this town. So that was quick. Like that was the Bobby that we remember, with a couple little liners and quick-witted Bobby here. The match is fine. I just, one of those weird things where it's like this match, knowing that just like the way, again, the way they lay the card out, knowing that someone's in this match is going to have to wrestle twice, this should have been the opener, and then you can spread it out a little bit more. Instead, you have them wrestle right here, and then they wrestle again, which is a point that one of them even mentioned when Disco Kidman comes on later. They're like, oh, wow, we got this match already. I thought there was going to be more time in between. Just more bad like organization stuff, just laying things out wrong. Darin, you hit on this when you talked about the match earlier. This is a good match. Like, this was a really good effort from Disco. Disco's kind of over here too. The people like the goofy Disco thing. He and I kind of thought was cool that Bobby during this match was talking about Disco, and he said, somebody needs to take him under their wing. You need to take him into a room and show him what he does wrong, and maybe be with him at ringside. Disco's and as he's saying that, Disco's like doing the Macarena, and he almost gets pinned. He does a giant swing. Hey, shout out to Cesaro there. And Hoovy hits a couple of Frankensteiners, a corkscrew off the top rope. Disco hits a pile driver for the W, so he's going to face Kidman later. But Darin, I'll go to you first on this one. Yeah, the match quality here was really good.
Yeah, I was always a big. I mean, look, if you listen to these shows, you know that I'm a big Bret Hart guy, which speaks to what I like. I'm a big in-ring wrestling kind of guy, with the exception of the Warrior, who was like my childhood, guy with the face paint like every other 7-year-old kid. This is a good match in terms of just the in-ring work. It's a lot of fun moves. It's a lot of cool spots. There's one slight botch when Juventud goes for a famouser and kind of tries to flip over and falls on his ass. That happens maybe 2 minutes into the match, but it's just a minor blip. What I think is otherwise a really technically sound match. You hit on Disco. Maybe it's being over and half being mocked for the gimmick, but the Disco gimmick, for whatever reason, was over. People got a kick out of it. Is Disco Inferno the greatest worker of all time? No, but He could go.
And he was a good foil in the cruiserweight division because he was like a bigger, like more of a straight man to play off of for all the smaller guys. You need someone like that in the division.
Yes. And if you put him with a guy that could really go, he would keep up and you would get a good match out of it. You know, you didn't watch his matches ever saying, "Oh, this guy stinks," because he didn't. He was good in the ring. There's no question about it. You know, but again, I enjoyed the match. I thought it, you know, technically, I thought it was an enjoyable match. I got a kick out of how much the crowd is into Disco Inferno. I kind of forgot that, you know, watching it back, how much the crowd loved that gimmick. But I enjoyed it just from a standpoint of a wrestling standpoint.
There was a lot that I didn't remember rewatching this match. The storyline going in is Disco Inferno may have been playing games with the scale in order to still be eligible for the cruiserweight division. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that was a rib on him because it's not like he was in bad shape. He was just sort of at the border of what you could market to be a cruiserweight. Mm-hmm. He was maybe 220, 230. And I don't know if somebody saw that and just decided to work it in, or if somebody thought he was fat and just
they did that with Buddy Murphy a little while ago. They kind of had that similar angle on when he was in the cruiserweight division. Yeah, it's a good angle. Yeah,
it is, and you can reuse it every once in a while with some effect to it, and that's fine. People forget how good a worker Juventud Guerrera was.
Yes, he's
excellent.
Everyone
remembers Rey Mysterio for good reason. Everyone remembers Eddie Guerrero. Everyone remembers Dean Malenko. Juventud Guerrera, when he wanted to go, could go as fast as just about anybody. And he has a hidden gem here that's one of the highlights of this show.
Mm-hmm.
Disco Inferno, as we mentioned, he is nobody's idea of a spectacular in-ring technician. This might be Disco Inferno's best match.
Yeah, you're right. It's up there.
And they do some goofy stuff. Disco doing the Macarena and getting rolled up is the quintessential 1998 spot. There's a lot of quintessential 1998 on this show. Just be forewarned of that if you decide to watch along. I love the spot with the swing. They do a couple of times. Disco gets dizzy and falls head first right into Hoovie's crotch. If that was planned, that was a darn good spot. Yeah. And yes, it made Disco look legitimate, but it also kept up his reputation as a total goof. And that is a tough line to walk when you're trying to put somebody in a position to challenge for a title.
You're right.
Not many guys could have done that. Disco wound up doing that. Tony Schiavone did not have a good night on this show.
No, you're right.
Didn't. And there was one line here where he goes, Juventud Guerrera has really shown that he's a much better wrestler without the mask. Huh?
Yeah.
What does that have to do with anything except for the fact that you can't get merchandise revenue off of a guy whose mask is now non-existent? It doesn't work. And before I move on, before we go further, I must just say that every time I see Lee Marshall pop on my television, I think it's my father. They are staggering as far as how much they look alike. Zeno, you've met my dad. You can see how I would think that.
That's funny. I wasn't putting two and two together, but now that you said that, absolutely. And I'm always... there's a fun podcast. If you like these old wrestling rewatches that we do, there's a really fun podcast that's called The Lapsed Fan, and they do, they break down really old shows, and they have podcasts that are 8 hours long talking about one show, and they joke about Lee Marshall, who's apparently like one of those guys who was very flirty with girls and stuff, and he had a reputation for like being a very a womanizer and like a ladies' man. And it's just so funny when they're doing they'll talk about Lee like, hey, hot stuff, in the Tony the Tiger voice. It's just great, really funny. And Lee was Lee has that voice, he has a good presence, and he anytime I see him on there, I get a good chuckle. We got the guys oogling over the Nitro girls as they were back out there again. And then one of my favorite parts of the show, here comes Big Papa Pump.
Only we would gloss over the Nitro girls in what little they were wearing in that particular segment to get to the roided up freakazoid known as Scott Steiner. I just want to make sure that's noted.
It is noted. Just breeze right past the half naked Nitro girls over to Big Papa Pump. And he comes out and he says, I'm standing here in Las Vegas, Nevada, in a town that never sleeps. But you see, I've been going for 30 days and 30 nights with a freak on my left and a freak on my right. and one in a box. So being in Las Vegas is a night off for me. So I'm just here to tell you, Big Papa Pump is in town, and he's ready to pound. So for all you freaks out there, Big Papa Pump is your hookup. Holla if you hear me.
Your poor son.
This is, what the hell is he talking about? With the freak in the box and the freak on his right and the freak on his left, and his catchphrase is that he is in town and he's ready to pound. That is his catchphrase.
Yeah. It's tough for me to watch this because I was a big Steiner Brothers guy, like in the early 90s and, NWA and WCW. I thought they were really, and from what I remember, I thought their matches, against Doom and stuff, those were fun matches. And back then, watching Scott Steiner, he could really go back then. And then you get this version of him, and it's so like forgettable for me because it's just it's like a totally different person than what he was. And look, it's one thing to be on steroids. This guy has got to be pumped full of every drug ever invented in the world.
It's unlike anybody else that's all on steroids. In a world where most of them are on steroids, he looks like a completely different guy.
Yeah, his bicep muscle has like a little head on top of the bicep muscle. I've never seen anything like that before. And if you see him now, he really paid the price for it because he has like atrophy in his chest muscles.
His whole chest is like he has to have a tattoo over in the middle to kind of cover it because his chest is like completely concave from all of the stuff that he did through the years.
Yeah, and it's just, but yeah, this promo, it's just like you're supposed to be feuding with your brother. Like, well, what the hell are you talking about? Like, again, another thing where you have a family member feud here. And not like that hasn't been done before. But, okay, we're going to have a promo, and you're talking about you're in town and ready to pound? Is that like your way of trying to appeal to the 16-year-olds in the crowd? For me, it was almost like I was watching this with my wife, and number one, like, he walks out, and she wasn't watching WWE when he was like Big Papa Pump and stuff back then, so she was out of it by then. And she looks at him and she goes, "Oh my God, that's disgusting." Just like, physique. And then he starts talking and she looks at me and she's like, "You used to watch this shit?"
Mission accomplished. That's exactly what I wanted from this show.
There you go.
So he finishes up. He cuts a promo on Buff. He challenges Rick and Buff Bagwell for the titles with the Giant. The Giant's, Paul White, the Big Show, who's long hair at this point, and talk about missing the boat on someone. He's just another guy here. He's just like an unbelievable presence and a look, and he's young, and he's not even really in that bad of shape yet. He's still like pretty thin. And they just treat him like he is just absolutely nothing, which is really crazy. J.J. Dillon comes out. He makes this match official. He says if they lose the tag titles, though, Scott's also got to fight Rick after in a one-on-one match for 15 minutes. Crowd likes the sound of that. They pop. Up next, we get Fit Finley versus Alex Wright. Das Wanda Kid. He's doing his Alex Wright dance. And Fit works on Alex early. Alex counters with some Euro uppercuts. The crowd was chanting boring super early in this match, although I didn't think it was that bad. I really didn't. It just wasn't the style that the crowd just didn't really like a hard-hitting kind of like, I think this is more of like an old school style match. They wanted something really quick or they wanted stars, It picked up when it went outside the ring. Alex hit a missile dropkick off the top rope that looked pretty cool. Fit goes flying into the ring post. He tries to hit his shoulder and he misses. And then Alex Wright with a quick neck breaker for the win. Again, like we're going through these first 4 matches. I didn't have a problem with any of them. And when you're looking at the card, like after you finish this match and you're going, this hasn't been, obviously there's been spots that dragged, right? We talked about some of the promos weren't great. But as far as what had been going on in the ring, these first 4 matches, I wasn't offended that there were 2 short matches. The other 2 that were longer were both good. And I'm thinking, wow, we've still got Steiner versus Steiner later, Scott Hall versus Kevin Nash, Bret Hart versus Sting, Hogan Warrior, Goldberg DDP. This is going to be one of the best pay-per-views ever, Andrew.
I'm afraid I've got some bad news. Now, first of all, before I go further, Darin, please apologize to your wife for making her watch this. I mean, that's just that's cruel and unusual punishment. At any rate, I've got a question for you guys. Alex Wright came into WCW in 1994, 19 years old, and the kid looked like $1 million. He was a good-looking kid, could work a good match with pretty much everybody, even at that young of an age, because of the fact that his father was a professional wrestler overseas. This guy knew what he was doing and had the psychology down from a really young age. Take that 19-year-old kid, put him in a time machine, get him to the Performance Center now. What do you wind up with?
Oh, yeah.
That's a missed opportunity right there, because
you mean the power plant didn't do the job there?
No. And for as goofy as he was with the stupid dance moves and whatever, this guy could work.
Mm-hmm.
And
he was like, it was a lot like Disco. He really was. And he's a better worker than Disco is. He can go more in the ring, but they had kind of a goofy gimmick that the crowd was into, even if it was just, being goofy to play along with it, and they could go in the ring. That's fine. There's a lot of guys that never get that kind of a connection.
Right. And it's a case where I felt like they missed the boat with this guy looking back, because he had a couple of other good matches. Jericho is one of the guys that said, hey, this guy wound up being one of the guys that we used to work with on the old worldwide tapings in Universal Studios that would get syndicated and run at about 1, 2 in the morning just to get guys experience and give them something to do. This guy was a really good worker, and it's a shame he didn't amount to much more than he did. This match was not bad. I thought the boring chants were really harsh. Finley was stiff. If you look at the strikes, this is not a guy that you wanted to mess with. And even in his older age, when he was working in WWE as Hornswoggle's father, this is a guy that held nothing back. Anytime he reared back to punch somebody, whoever was in the ring with him, they didn't get a phantom punch. This guy didn't know the meaning of working light, and he had some really good matches as a result. He had a parking lot brawl with Steven Regal, a.k.a. William Regal, in 95 on an episode of Nitro. That was really good. And he would go on to have a series of matches with Booker T for the TV title that were excellent. That TV title division was really good around this time. But nothing offensive here at all. I just wish they had done more with Alex Wright when they had the chance to do it looking back, because he checked a lot of boxes, and he's another guy that WCW just seemed to miss on.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm going to give Alex Wright some high praise here with a comparison. Watching this match, I'm not going to put him on the same level because he's not as strong and he's not quite as athletic. But for in-ring work, watching him reminded me a little bit of Cesaro.
I knew you were going to go there, and I can see it. I can see a lot of it. Yeah, I can see a lot of the tendencies that he had, the way he worked also. You know what's funny? He might be more over than Cesaro ever was, over with the crowd, which has kind of been one of the problems for Cesaro. But I can see that, Darin. And I mean, again, we're through, 4 matches. They've all been pretty solid. They've all been pretty inoffensive. We've got some major stars still, on the second half of the show, but things start to turn a little bit here. Not immediately. We go backstage. We've got Lee Marshall with Ernest Miller. Ernest Miller was kind of funny here. He was talking about how he's doing 65-0 against the guys in the locker room, and he's 5-0 against the fat fans. Or he says something like that, but it was okay. It was actually I got a chuckle out of it. And then the next match we have just kind of a waste. Like, it just felt like something that could have been better served on Monday Nitro, right? It's just like, do this on Monday Nitro. That's fine. it's just a prolonged squash. It's Lodi versus Saturn. They were getting behind Saturn after they split up the flock. He was, in the flock with Raven. I don't mind the entrance, the siren with Saturn. You kind of recognize that, and I think Cesaro actually had, I think, a similar type of entrance for a while too. But remember Lodi's, he's got all the signs. He was part of the flock. Saturn's get-up was goofy too here. Tony mentioned it. Like, he's wearing a beret to represent his time with the Army Rangers, but he almost looks like he's like he's like gonna play like a stripper and be in some like S&M club or something. During the middle of the match, Lodi leaves to go get his signs. It's just, this was blah. I mean, Saturn was always fine in the ring. I think Bruce Pritchard was talking about it on his show. He just didn't have a lot of charisma. He couldn't really get over. He was fine. He could go. I think he would have been even better served and best served as maybe a tag wrestler with someone else who was a little more over. Fine, as they would say in the ring, but he just never was more than like an undercard type guy. Even when he came over with when he made that big move with was it Guerrero, Malenko and Voldemort when they came over.
Yeah, there's a town in New Jersey called Lodi, spelled the same way.
California too.
Yeah, I used to think that was the worst example of that word ever. Until being reminded of this guy. I mean, this is just a complete. I guess they wanted to get Saturn on the card. Okay, fine. This is just bad. And I mean, Lodi's terrible in the ring. Saturn looks like a combination of, a porn star meets Hell's Angels.
Right?
And Lodi is wearing like these miniature leather shorts with like silver loops on it. It looks like he's like a dominatrix.
If you were flipping the channel and you didn't know what you were watching and this came up, you were like, what time of the night is this? Yeah.
Yeah. Like what? Like it was funny because this guy came out and Amanda says to me, well, check out this guy's outfit. And then Saturn comes out and she goes, what the hell are these two guys about to do? I mean, Saturn had some decent stuff with Raven, I mean, that was probably some of his better work here. But I mean, look, the less said about this, the better. Saturn's on the card. His work in the ring is fine. He's in good shape. He looks good. And, Lodi could be forgotten sooner rather than later.
I'm just happy Perry Saturn is alive, because if you follow the stuff that happened to him after he left the world of professional wrestling, he was in an altercation back in 2004, breaking up a rape. He got shot, and after he got shot, he wound up turning to drugs to try to numb the pain, and then had to deal with the addiction. It almost killed him. He wound up resurfacing and I guess has cleaned up. So more power to him for that. It's a really strange backstory. If you've got the time to look into that, it's something, that's for darn sure. But this match, oh boy, it's one of those things where you're wondering why the hell this match had to happen, why Lodi had to be the guy opposite the ring from Saturn as opposed to somebody that could potentially have made him look good. Wonder who they could have potentially used other than, let's see, Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, all the guys that were not on this show, that were on WCW's roster at the time. And I was waiting for the opportunity to say this, so I might as well. All the things they could have done to go over, they go over with matches like this. You know who is not on this card? Any of the Four Horsemen, which reformed 6 weeks prior to this show. Yeah. Just horrible management by whoever was putting this show together. And as Darin said, the less said about this match, the better.
So we get the Nitro Girls again. The third time so far. And this is where I said, it's like, come on, girls, get the F out of here so I can see some half-naked dudes in predetermined wrestling, please. Okay? That's why I'm here. And then it's Disco versus Kidman. This was fine. It's not as good as the first match, in my opinion, because I think Disco's a little tired. I really do. You can kind of tell that they were working this match, I think, slower because of that factor. It was slow early, but the commentary, man, they're putting Kidman over like a star. In particular, Bobby. Bobby is all over Kidman. He loves him. Kidman's got he was good. He was really good in the ring. He actually is a guy that ends up beating Hulk Hogan in about a year 3 times in a row. I think he ends up pinning him. He hits a cool looking, running bulldog off the steps on the outside of the ring. And then Disco slows it down. We get the Disco sucks chants. And I think they were a little bit hamstrung by the fact that Disco had wrestled twice in a pretty quick amount of time. Like this match could have gone on maybe a couple matches later. I think they wanted to save the main events to kind of stack them the last 4 matches in a row as big names. But I wasn't bothered by this. It was okay. It just wasn't quite as good as the earlier match.
Yeah. And I mean, in Disco's defense, I mean, between the 2 matches, he's out there for more than the other 4 matches combined. So, he did a lot of work here in the start of the show. You're right. In my notes, I made a note where I said they're really pushing Kidman a lot. They clearly like him. And you could see why in the ring. I mean, he's not only athletic, agile, but he actually has deceptive strength in some of the stuff.
He's a little bigger than you think. He's kind of good looking, a little good looking too, kind of different look, Yeah, I like him.
Yeah, absolutely. Disco hits in this match kind of like a Baron Corbin Deep Six kind of move that was pretty cool. And I made a note of that. And then obviously the shooting star press at the end, where Kidman gets the pin is always a nice move to see. Yeah, I mean, the match is fine. You're right. You could tell that Disco doesn't have the energy he did for the first match, but I give him credit. The guy was out there twice in an hour.
Over 20 minutes between the 2 matches. Yeah, which
was not common for WCW back then. Guys like that were not wrestling twice, and certainly were not wrestling twice when they were 2 of the longer matches in the card. So yeah, again, nothing wrong with it. I enjoyed the match. It was interesting to see if this is another guy that, Kidman, that they seem to like and, might have been a bit of a wasted opportunity. And, you mentioned Alex Wright. He was under that AOL Time Warner contract, so WWE couldn't sign him. He was one of those guys that kind of got screwed by that. And you have to wonder if WWE was able to get their hands on him, maybe he would have turned into something.
Yeah.
They did a lot with a lot of other guys, but that's a very common tale at this point in WCW.
Kidman had just gotten a makeover after leaving Raven's Flock. He had just recently won the Cruiserweight title. They weren't quite putting the rocket on him, but you could tell this was a guy they had major plans for down the line.
And then Russo loved him too when he came in, and that made it even go more, yeah.
Part of the problem here, though, is Kidman was still very young. He was 24 years old and was sort of thrust into this picture with a little more responsibility. And the match was fine, but there was a definite styles clash here between Kidman and Disco, and he wasn't in a position of knowing how to handle that yet. He would eventually get there, and he had a lot of really good matches on the undercards of some major shows. But his biggest contribution to the wrestling world is twofold. One, he's one of the reasons we know who Tori Wilson is. 2, he contributed to what is arguably the very first pro wrestling meme in the history of the internet wrestling community. One of the things that the internet wrestling community caught on to really fast is anytime someone would try to powerbomb Kidman, there would always be a reversal. So the internet wrestling community, anytime something happened with a match, in all caps would scream, "But you can't powerbomb Kidman." There's a good YouTube video out there of some of the montages of things with a voiceover artist, and it's pretty darn funny. So if you've got a chance, take a look at that. It's pretty cool to give yourself a little bit of insight into sort of the beginnings of the internet wrestling community there. This match was fine. It wasn't bad. You mentioned Disco being out there a while. That certainly didn't help. The one weird spot in this match to me was Disco gets Kidman down after a couple of moves, and it's early in the match, and for some reason, Disco yells into the camera, "Kidman, turn the music down." "Yes, Mom." What's that supposed to mean? Yeah. I don't get it. Especially for a guy whose gimmick is dancing to music. I don't understand any part of that. And I guess I know what Disco was going for to try to taunt the guy, but Kidman wasn't the guy whose mother was occasionally getting trotted out in a mother on the pole match. It worked. I don't get what was going on there. A decent match, though. Kidman hits the shooting star press. People are happy. And up until this point, guys, up until this very point, it's a pretty darn good pay-per-view.
Yeah, it is. And one day we'll get to Judy Bagwell on a poll. I can promise you that.
It will not be on my doing.
That will be a pick of mine in one day, just because I can't wait to talk about that. We now move on to tag team titles. Scott Steiner and the Giant versus Rick Steiner and Buff Bagwell. I mean, this is the point when like the NWO just have the tag team titles and just can defend them with like whoever they want, like a Freebird rule. And Bischoff literally had said at this point, he hated tag team wrestling. He didn't think there were any tag teams worth, promoting or worth building around. And you could see this. It's like they don't – once the outsiders kind of stopped being a part of the tag team division, they just didn't really care about it, period. We get Rick Steiner's getting worked on a lot. Most of the match early on. I mean, he turns it around, and this crowd, every time, Rick has got the advantage. They are hot. He hits a clothesline. He hits an elbow, and he looks like he's gonna go for the pin. And then Buff is like begging to get in the ring, and immediately he's in the ring for like 2 seconds, and then he turns on Rick, and everyone's just fed up with Buff. He ends up leaving, and Bobby's like disgusted with him, which is funny. And Bobby says he's just like Hogan, which I thought was funny too, because Bobby just. The one consistent for him all the way back from the AWA, I believe, was his feud with Hogan. Whatever side they were on, they were always on the opposite sides. He said, I thought this was funny too. Buff lied to the announcers in their pre-show meeting. I like that point that they were talking about the pre-show meeting, and then they were talking to him backstage. The Giant looks like he's got the pin on Rick at one point. He pulls him up. Rick gets woken up when he gets his head slammed into the turnbuckle, so he's got the Samoan gene also in him with the dog face, and he makes the comeback. Then we get, as Darin mentioned, in this match, there's like 5 low blows. Here's one of them, Scott Steiner with a blatant low blow. And then just to show you how damn athletic the Giant was, even when he doesn't give a crap and he's not, booked very well here, he goes for a drop kick off the top rope. That was damn impressive. It ends up missing, and he hits Scott. I actually like the way that this ended up happening. So Scott gets nailed. He kind of does he sells it almost like The Rock would. Like The Rock would sell a stunner, where he flips over and he throws his legs up, and then Scott's legs are stuck in the ropes. That was a really, really cool spot here to end it. And Rick hits a bulldog off the top rope on the Giant for the win. The new tag team champions are Rick Steiner. So, Andrew, I mean, this crowd loved them some Rick Steiner.
Crowd was into this, and more power to everybody involved for getting them to that point. However, we're going to explain the storyline. I feel like we need a Dean Douglas bump in whenever I decide to explain a storyline. Yeah. Many months before this, the Steiners are wrestling and they're defending their tag titles. Rick Steiner goes for the top rope bulldog on one Marcus Buff Bagwell. Bagwell darn near breaks his neck. And at the time, this was one of the most serious injuries that had ever been seen on a professional wrestling broadcast. I cannot underscore just how terrifying this was for a lot of people, including a lot of younger people that are watching this stuff, people that are our age, like teenagers and such, who are not used to that. People that are used to sort of cartoon wrestling, even ECW stuff, where you know that injuries are going to happen, but it comes with the territory. This was different than that. So Buff goes to the sidelines, gets his surgery, comes back. You know how it took leukemia to make Roman Reigns a beloved babyface? Buff Bagwell, if he had any ability at all to play a babyface, should have been one of the biggest baby faces in the entire company.
Right then. It was already built in for you.
Here's your problem. This guy couldn't play a baby face if you gave him a script and told him to memorize it. This guy is a natural heel. They tried to make him a face for years before this. They tried to make him this big blue chipper baby face. Back in the early 90s, they put him with Scotty Riggs as the American Males, which, by the way, is the single worst theme music in the history of professional wrestling, and I will fight anyone who disagrees with me on that. So they bring Buff Bagwell back, and they try to make him a babyface very briefly. And then I firmly believe someone realizes, wait a minute, this guy can't do this. So we get what we get. Buff gets the hot tag. Everybody's excited. And we don't even get any hope spots. He just beelines straight for Rick Steiner, bludgeons him down, celebrates as the same
This
old
stupid little celebrating.
with
Yeah.
the very punchable face. Like, it just did not work at all whatsoever, and nobody bought it. Now, at this time, Scott Steiner, while being incredibly roided up, could still move. And he could still do a lot of the things that Darin, people like us, admired him for doing in the early to mid-90s. He hit a Frankensteiner later on in this match. He could still do a lot of the things that we really liked Scott Steiner for doing. And he could still work, as evidenced by the way that he sold the Giants missile dropkick like that. Not a lot of muscleheads could do that. But this match and the resulting match, the Rick and Scott thing, I've got some issues with. So the Giant tries to get heat, and the big genius way that they decide to give this guy, who they instantly pushed as one of the biggest stars in the company when he
Didn't he
signed
beat
a couple
Hogan
years
right
earlier.
away? Yeah.
Yes. You know what they gave him as a way to get heat? They gave him a pack of cigarettes.
He would smoke. And what's funny is the cigarettes, they look like a joint. It's not even like an actual cigarette. It's like a tobacco roll that you would roll on your own with papers. It's just he would smoke walking down to the ring.
Yes. And it's one of those things where you're like, oh, okay, you're slowly killing yourself with tobacco. Good on you, buddy. It just did not work at all whatsoever, and I don't know why WCW did that. The entrances for this match took forever. This was another instance where I'm like, come on, guys. Little sense of urgency here. Let's go. The Giant has a really funny spot right before the match where Charles Robinson, Lil Nate, is asking for the tag title belts, and the Giant just holds the belt way up over his head and actually has Charles Robinson jump up and down and try to get it. That's a pretty good little Easter egg. But Bagwell turns, and the crowd turns on this match. You hear the audible bullshit, bullshit chant. Now, Rick goes over. In fact, Rick goes over twice. First, he gets the Bulldog on the Giant off the top rope. Crowd goes insane. Trivia question for both of you without looking. Who winds up getting the other half of the tag belts the next night on Monday Nitro?
Ooh, that's a good question. I have no idea.
Darin?
Oh, shoot. Not Conan.
No, but you got the right first letter. Kenny Chaos from the
Chaos.
memorable jobber team High Voltage.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Wow. Yeah,
Like, it's one thing, like, for instance, you know who would have fit really well in that spot? Wrath.
yeah.
Right freaking there. You
Yep.
give Rick Steiner a heater. You give Wrath a bit of a continuation of the push. Wrath is able to be the big guy in a tag team with Rick Steiner taking the beating and tagging out. You get Wrath.
Give me
breaking
Saturn. Even
Saturn
you're
works
building
there
up
too.
Saturn. You know what I mean? Like you're trying to build him. Put him in there. You got two kind of baby faces who are kind of hot. You got Rick's kind of going against his brother in the NWO, and Saturn's just had his little thing with the flock. It just, yeah, I agree. It always leaves a sour taste in the mouth when you know what happens afterward, and it's no good. Just like what happens with the Bret Hart Austin match at WrestleMania 13, knowing how amazing it is for the industry going forward, it just makes that match so much better.
For sure. Now, Rick gets his moment there, and then he gets his match with Scott. And I hope you guys don't mind. I'm lumping both.
No,
of
go
these
ahead.
together.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the crowd is molten for this, and for good reason. This is supposed to be Rick getting his revenge on his brother, and who can't identify with that, right? If you've grown up with a sibling, you get an opportunity for that. Rick gets a couple of minutes, and in comes some guy in a Bill Clinton mask, and you know it's Bagwell. You know it just based on the fact that the guy is just impossibly built in a suit. You absolutely know.
He's doing his stupid little strut too. Yeah.
So he comes in, hits him with the WCW trademark slapjack, whatever the hell a slapjack is. So then you get Bagwell rolling Charles Robinson around the ring, Weekend at Bernie's style, trying to do the count, and Rick keeps getting up at 2. So Rick winds up winning that match over his brother. Here's my problem. There was a big deal made earlier on in the show about the length of time that match was going to go. Rick explicitly said he wanted 15 minutes. He got 7. No one had any semblance of time with this show. As a package, this was okay. Rick Steiner gets to go over. We get a feel-good moment with the NWO getting some comeuppance. I'm fine with it in principle, but in practice, there's a lot of problems.
Yeah. I mean, I know what the story is, but isn't it kind of backwards? Like shouldn't he have had to have beaten Scott to get a shot at the belts?
Yeah. Yeah, everything about the storylines and all this stuff is a lot backwards because they just don't care.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. The real feud is the one-on-one. But if you're going to put the belts on Rick, maybe you do. I mean, I know Bagwell turned, so maybe but again, it's just, to me, it's just a sign of them sitting down and drawing up a plan in 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. And going, we're going to do this. We'll do it this way.
And nobody questioned one thing to say, but what about this? And then they would have immediately realized, oh, you know what? We got to tweak something. It's just like, no, you're 100% right. It feels like with so much of this that nobody had a conversation backstage before they went out and did a lot of it. And that's what, as a fan, that was the downfall of WCW. That, like so many of these little things that we point out because go ahead.
Here's another little thing. I mean, Andrew hit on just about every substantive thing that you could hit on between this. Here's a little thing. With the exception of the World Heavyweight Championship title, the belts suck.
Yeah.
If you look at them, Cruiserweight, the tag title, the U.S. title, it looks like the same belt.
Yep.
They're terrible.
It's bland.
Bland, generic. It looks like something you get at a Target on the kids' toy aisle. It's a little thing, but watching it back, I'm going, all right, there's the World TV title. Hey, the World TV title looks a lot like the Cruiserweight title. And then the tag belts come out, and I'm like, wow, that looks like 2 Cruiserweight belts. And then Bret Hart comes out later with the U.S. title, and I'm like, well, that looks like the tag title, but maybe a couple of inches bigger. But it looks like the same damn belt design. It's just another part of it that just, with WCW back then, where all the money that they had behind them and all the TV production and all of this and all of that, man, a lot of the stuff is half-assed, and maybe half-assed is putting it generously. The last thing I'll touch on, you mentioned the Bagwell injury. That happened on a Nitro in the spring. I think it was a Nitro, yeah. And
yeah, it sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to call it a botched bulldog, but basically what happens is Rick comes down, and as Buff is coming down, Rick's arm slips off of Bagwell's head. And Bagwell falls, Rick hits the ground first, and Bagwell then falls behind him. And it's like, in the live shot, when you see it live, you can't even tell. But what ends up happening is he basically jams his head on Rick's back, and he basically goes stiff, and it's scary.
Yeah.
And I remember I thought he was going to be either done or out for a very, very long time. And when he showed up 4 months later, I was shocked.
Me too. I remember that was one of those things wow. 10 years old me, definitely a little scared there. Rick was fine. I mean, Rick is just over with this crowd. It's just another one of those things where it's like, okay, you're building Rick up. What the hell happens after this?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Another thing. Did the referee take a bump in every match on this pay-per-view?
Everyone.
Yes.
They got the crap kicked out of them on a few.
Oh, God.
Jesus.
Right.
I mean, Brett nails him later, too, in the match we're going to talk about in a few minutes. And I think Tony mentions that, man, the refs got it bad. They got just crushed. And not they weren't creative ref bumps. They're just the heel just throwing the ref out of the ring or, attacking the ref, which just is no creativity to it whatsoever. Bobby says that Rick isn't human. So Bobby was all over that. And they're definitely, trying to get Rick over. He got over. He's over. It's just they don't do anything with him moving forward because we're going to see the man coming up next. The man who embodies everything that is cool. And I think knowing everything I know about WCW in this era, I just hate Nash. I really do. I mean, it's almost like how you are with Hogan for like all the stuff that he did in the WWF era earlier. And Hogan's still doing it now in WCW, but Nash is now doing it, and he's acting like he thinks he is so damn cool in everything he does. And it bothers me because Nash as Diesel was good. Like, he was a good character as Diesel. Vince knew what to do with him. Vince knew how to get the right kind of a match out of him. He was more motivated there. He didn't have full, complete creative control. And, like a match like this. Okay, so it's on paper, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, the Outsiders, the buddies. Like, this is going to be a great match, right? They're going to be working hard. There's going to be, like, a lot of storyline behind it. First off, doesn't it feel like the drugs, like alcohol, kind of is back? Like, it's weird because generally you have the baby face as the person who is struggling through drugs and through alcohol and like overcoming it. We see Jerry Lawler did it with Jake the Snake, and we see CM Punk did it with Jeff Hardy. WWE's doing a similar thing. They were just doing it with Sheamus and Jeff Hardy too. But it's like the baby face is generally the one who's had the struggles and needs to overcome. This just seems weird with a guy who is at the time having major drug and alcohol issues, just putting this front and center, having the guy act like he's drunk on TV. Who knows? He might have been a lot of the time. I think he was, acting like he's drinking on the way to the ring here. Everything about this match to me was awful. This thing ends up going 14 minutes, and it's not even a match. It's about 5 or 6 minutes of, Hall just completely beating the crap out of Nash because Nash is like letting him. And then what makes Nash fight back? There's nothing in the middle of the match. He doesn't come out and cut a promo. He doesn't do something that like triggers Nash. It's just 6 minutes into the match, Nash just decides he's going to start fighting back. Why? Like, what sparked this? I'm curious. It's just so weird. So now Nash is in control. There's no back and forth whatsoever. One guy dominates, then the other guy dominates. It's slow as molasses. Neither guy cares about having a good match because they're getting their paycheck. It's like so few of these main eventers have a quick-paced match at all. And all we saw, Raven Jericho, quick-paced. Ming and Wrath, they went quick for their 4 minutes. Disco and, Hoovy, they were going fast. Alex Wright was at a good pace. Kidman's at a good pace. Rick Steiner was working his butt off, And now we get these guys who you could just tell they don't give a shit. And it's like, I'm supposed to care and think that this is a big deal, And then even at the end, why you're beating the crap out of the guy. You're trying to prove a point. He says, like, I'm going to beat it out of him. Why not just pin him, put your foot over his chest, and walk out of the ring? Why do you let him win by a count out? I didn't like anything about this match or this angle or this feud or this build.
Yeah. And for me, it was really uncomfortable to watch this because, clearly Scott Hall is going through stuff here. And to be honest with you, just looking at him, in a period of 2 years, it looks like he aged a decade.
Yep.
You could see it on his face.
He wears it on his face. Yeah.
Yes.
Whenever he did those goofy pigtail things, you just knew he was like jacked up,
Jacked up. Yep. And look, I won't say he's out of shape because I would like to be out of shape like this. But if you compare him here to like peak Razor Intercontinental,
the match we just did, 92, when he comes in and he looks like a monster.
Yeah, he's probably 25, 30 pounds heavier, and it's not muscle. And it's just, and you could tell he's not taking care of himself. He's probably not working out the way he should be. He's drinking, he's on drugs. And the vast majority of this match is just punches and haymakers. What's fun about that?
And they're slow. It's not like quick pay. It's just
hit. And it's 15 minutes long, which makes it even worse. Yeah. Everything about this is bad. And this is why, for me, this pay-per-view sucks. And it's not – and listen, there are some good, decent matches to start it. This pay-per-view sucks because your big headline, name in lights matches are god-awful, with the exception of the last match.
There are 4 of them that we're going to talk about, starting with this. The 3 of them that have the 6 biggest stars at the time in pro wrestling right here. I mean, Goldberg is he's hotter, but Hall and Nash are bigger names. They're more known. They've got more of a career. Hart and Sting, Hogan and Warrior. Not one of those guys looked like they gave a shit in this show. Not one of them. And then you get to Goldberg and DDP, who really did, which was a bummer. I would give me 4 of those damn matches instead of these 3 we had to suffer through before that.
Right. And compare that, and Angel, I'll let you take it from here, but when we talk about like the WWE pay-per-views that we've watched where, there have been some WrestleManias or whatever that we've seen where like, wow, that match was terrible, this was bad, whatever. But we never got a pay-per-view where the big matches all were garbage. Yep. And to me, that's why this thing is covered in stink.
Okay, so you guys hit on a lot of the big points here. One thing I will say is I don't think the Brett Sting match was bad. I just think it was really disappointing, and we'll get to the reasons why in a bit.
Yep.
You guys hit on a lot of the major details with the Hall Nash thing. I've got a hot take. Make no mistake, Hogan and Warrior was a worse match. I am not debating that. I think this was a worse watch.
I like this less. I think I like this even less because I could hate watch the Hogan Warrior thing and laugh at it a little bit. Yeah.
Like, you look at this match and you see a guy who is crying for help. And a guy that when he is on his game is one of the most exciting performers in the business. A guy who got psychology better than just about anybody. You've got Kevin Nash, a.k.a. Diesel, legit drawing card. When he wants to be a big guy that can move, everybody drink. In this match, Nash had, in the words of, I forget who said this, it might have been Cornette, but this is one of the matches where you can see Kevin Nash in 4 moves, 5 if you count the hair flip territory. It was just not imaginative at all. Nash gets cut up early in the match, and it seemed like he got cut up because Scott Hall got careless.
Yeah.
You saw they were playing around with the wire outside the ring that went to one of the cameras. This was just bad on so many levels. I don't know who this was booked to please, and if this was a way to try to wake Scott Hall up, it did not work. I mean, that's why rehab is there. That's why you send people to rehab. That's why WWE has the rehab program for all current and former employees, which for all the things they do wrong, they did that right, and that should be credited for that. The less said about Scott Hall in this period, the better. I am just happy that guy is alive.
And the thing that's like, Kevin Nash is going to go on and take the title from Goldberg not long after this. Like, that's what's so crazy. You come out of this show, and I mean, Rick Steiner is way hotter and more over than him. And like, there's so many other ways you could go. Give me Bret Hart, which they go to Goldberg later, and anybody else, Hogan or Warrior would have been even like Hogan at least had the stuff with, I don't understand. It was Nash was in charge, and he was able to make a lot of the decisions and book the matches. And this was, I mean, I got frustrated watching this match. I just like, it was like, watching this, getting the feeling that Kevin Nash is like looking at me individually with his middle finger up, just kind of like, F you, buddy. I've got all the money I need. I don't have to work all those dates anymore like I did at WWF. I got all the creative control. I'm here with my boys. I'm just going to come out and like nothing, like urgency. When I worked one of my first jobs at Islands Restaurant, I come in and I'm like, a busboy and a host and then an food expediter and everything. It's like one of the things that they say and we used to laugh and joke about is, having a sense of urgency. There was none of that in this match whatsoever, and it's disrespectful to a fan when you can tell that the in-ring workers don't give a shit, and that was the case here. In this, This was like more about the story than it was the match, and the story's a shitty story. So excuse some of my verbiage. We got a little here. This was one of my least favorite matches I think that I've watched in all of the pay-per-views that we've covered so far, because I just know that we saw these two guys at 95 SummerSlam, or was it 94 SummerSlam? Like, they had a good match for the IC title. We know that they both can go. We've seen them both have many 4-star matches with other guys.
And it's one of those things where, look, I knew Hogan Warrior was going to be bad. I knew there was stuff to criticize. This is the one time on this entire show where I felt legitimately bad for picking this show because I forgot how far gone Scott Hall was.
I mean, right before he hits the jackknife, he does the little mimicking that he's drinking, like he's a drunk guy. He's, and actually Tony, you talked about how Tony wasn't having a very good night. He actually calls it the jackhammer. And then they have to correct him real quick and say, it's the jackknife. And then Tony, oh yeah, jackknife. And then even though on the second one, like, he kind of struggles to get him up a little bit. It's almost scary for a second. It looks like he's kind of like losing his grip. Nash is kind of losing his grip on Hall for a second. We'll move on now to the fourth time that the Nitro Girls are on the show.
But in wigs. They're wearing wigs.
They got wigs and they got a different getup here. In a show that ran long and had to be cut off, we have this and a 14 minute and 19 second Scott Hall versus Kevin Nash that you could have cut 6 minutes off of that and it would have been the exact same match. Exact same match. Here we go. Bret Hart, the U.S. champion. It's Bret Hart versus Sting. It's the Sharpshooter versus the Scorpion. Deathlock. I think you meant you hit on a good point, Andrew. If I'm just watching this match, I don't know Bret, I don't know Sting, I don't know the backstories, I don't know Bret, and his history in WWF. This wouldn't have really been offensive to me. This would have been just okay. It's just knowing everything that we know, knowing that less than a year and a half ago, Bret is involved in one of the top 5 matches of all time. We know how damn good he is. And we even see some shades of him being good here and there in WCW. But man, he just really didn't seem like he cared a lot. He is a good heel. I'll give you that, because he was really cheating and he was being, dastardly here, using a baseball bat, all these different things. But we get 2 minutes of Bret Hart's music playing before he walks out. Here comes Sting, and it's like NWO Wolfpack. So this match has started, and it's already just weird. Like, Bret's taken forever to get to the ring, and anytime Sting comes out with an NWO theme, it just doesn't fit. And we spoke a little bit about how Sting wasn't in great shape at this time physically. I mean, the guy is supposed to be the savior not long before this. He's got that awesome run in 97. He's in the rafters. Everything leading up to the Starrcade match was incredible. And then everything from the Starrcade match after and how they handled him was just miserable. And remember, Bret was involved in that storyline with the botched Hogan and Sting, finish, what didn't even really look like a botched finish. So they set it up as Sharpshooter versus Scorpion. One thing I did think was interesting, Darin, is that they mentioned that Bret's a 5-time world champion. We don't see that a lot in wrestling companies where they mention titles from other organizations. So they're definitely still giving him the rub as like being a legitimate main eventer. They said Sting's a 4-time world champ, but we know what we can get from Bret. Could you imagine this match 2 years earlier where they're both like, it's face versus face and the crowd's just insane for both of these guys?
Yeah. So this is where this show really, really got to me, because I remember watching it as a kid. My favorite wrestler in the history of WCW was Sting. And my favorite wrestler in the history of WWE was Bret Hart. So for me, this was everything I would ever want to see. Sting is not in the best Sting shape by a long shot. If you remember what Sting looked like in the early, to mid-90s, I mean, Sting was jacked, cut up, ripped.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, he's clearly lost quite a bit off of the fastball in terms of working out and things like that. Brett still looks like Brett. He still looks
he
great.
looks great.
Yeah.
I mean, I wrote that down too. He comes out and he looks great still. Yeah.
Yeah, still looks like Brett. I mean, the moves in the ring, the side Russian leg sweep, that back breaker is one of the best side back breakers you'll ever see. All the stuff that he does, it's all there. But he's not having fun, and you can tell. And we talked about when we watched Survivor Series 92 last week, the match with him and Shawn, you could tell that the two of them were having a blast out there. You could see it in everything that they did. Brett is completely miserable here. And it shows in his facial expressions. And even if he's playing a heel, it's art imitating life. This is his attitude probably in real life right now. And it's coming across as the character. And I hate it because this is not the Bret Hart I grew up watching. And is the match horrendously bad? No. But knowing what these guys can do at their best, this match should have been so much more. And for that reason alone, it makes me sick as a wrestling fan going back and watching this because it's the 15-year-old in me being so disappointed in what this match ended up being and so disappointed in the Bret character and, the whining and the temper tantrums. And I get it. He's a heel. But it's just very not – it's even worse than the 97 stuff because, in 97 in WWE, the guy was legitimately getting screwed over.
No, he had a gripe. Yeah. He had a legit gripe. The Canada stuff worked. This just seems like there's so much off about it. It's just like you said. It's bad. Like he doesn't care. He feels like. I heard some of those things about Bret that he would show up literally like a half hour before his match on pay-per-views and stuff like this. He wasn't hanging out in the back with the guys. He was the locker room leader of the WWF for years. Guys went to him to help settle disputes and arguments. And now here he's just getting a paycheck. He doesn't really even stick his nose in anything creatively because it's Hogan and it's Nash and it's all those guys who he never really loved, to begin with in WWF. It's sort of a bummer, man. It really is.
I'll say this before I send it over to Andrew. To me, this is a big part of why WCW failed. And it's not just that they spent an exorbitant amount of money on talent. In my opinion, if you're making $2 million, $2.5 million, $3 million, $4 million a year, working 100 days out of the year, you're saying to yourself, well, what, I don't need to go out there but these guys are paying me a ton of money. I'm going to go out there and get by, and it's going to show. And I think they overpaid these guys for so little work. And I think it reflected in the work they did. And eventually that caught up to the product. And I think for a lot of other reasons, that was a big part of the problem in WCW.
Agreed on a lot of different fronts there. I mean, the complacency that existed among a lot of WCW guys near the end was it was evident and you could see. And going to this match, none of it made any sense. Here we have Bret Hart coming out to face Sting. Bret's a bad guy, and we know Bret can play a bad guy. But Bret was never the lie, cheat, steal, whine heel. Bret was a guy who, as a heel, always believed he was better than you in the ring and backed it up.
That's a good point.
It was a different kind of heel.
He wasn't Larry Zbyszko.
No,
right. And that's who he's playing here with the stalling off and ducking out of the ring here and there. It's a different heel Bret than we've seen, and this isn't the best version of heel Bret. It's like you just have guys just so miscast in a lot of these roles.
Yep. And then you have Sting, who 10 months earlier was WCW's savior. Earlier this year, when the NWO splits off, the first thing both NWO factions do is try to recruit Sting, who had spent the lion's share of the previous year and a half trying to not just defeat, but humiliate every guy in the NWO, especially, of course, Hollywood Hogan. There was legitimate tension, too, about if he would go to black and white or if he would go to the red and black. And they acted as though we should have been relieved when he went to the Wolfpack. No! Sting is the lone wolf. Sting is the vigilante. Sting is the franchise. Just no. No buys on any of that.
Absolutely.
The red and black gear looked reasonably cool, but then he started with the goatee, which didn't make sense. None of this worked in any sort of concept. And that was driven home by a line said by Mike Tenay that was not supposed to be a shoot comment, but was a shoot comment. You have Bret Hart, arguably the best technical wrestler in the world. You have Sting, who has wrestled legitimate classics with Ric Flair, with Vader, with any number of guys. Mike Tenay's quote, "We don't expect a technical wrestling clinic." Why not?
Why? I know. It's supposed to. That's what we're supposed to be.
The best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. Going up against a guy who, when he gets the right opponent, can keep up. This could have been, I don't want to say should have been, but this could have been 10 times the match that it was. Now, the match that we got wasn't horrible because these two guys could work a decent match in their sleep, and they pretty much did. Unnecessary ref bump, check that box, but they do a cool little sequence where they do Irish whips and the Stinger splash with the referee right in the middle of the ring.
Yeah,
and
that was cool.
That was pretty inventive.
Like around him. They work around the ref, yeah.
Exactly. Now, make no mistake, it wasn't good, but they tried to be different. Bret gets the sharpshooter, Sting passes out, whatever. The Sting stretcher job took 6 minutes.
I timed it too. 6
minutes.
minutes from the end of the match until he's in the ambulance.
Yep. And then he was off for 6 months.
Till March 99.
Now, he's off 6 months after not working a match from September 96 until December 97. He works 10 months, and then he's off 6 months. The problems that he was going through, we knew they existed, but that sort of spotlights how bad they were.
Yeah.
And he's never really talked about how bad they actually were, and there's a reason for that. He is a born-again Christian, and I think just wants to leave that in the past, which I get, and I'm happy he's here. And by all accounts, he's a legitimate good guy. But that was not a good look for anybody. This match was okay, but it should have been 10 times greater than okay.
So you talked about the ref bump. Sting, he swings his elbow to the back because he thinks it's Bret from behind, and he ends up, elbowing the ref. And then the ref's kind of down on the floor, and then Bret just comes and just drops the leg on the back of his neck. Just brutal, like a brutal leg drop to the back of the neck of the ref. And then a little later on, Sting goes up to the top rope, and he hits a superplex off the top. And when he superplexes Bret, his legs just nail the back part of the referee's legs too, like right off the top. They just don't give a crap about these poor refs out there who are just getting beat up. Stinger hits the splash, but he jumps so high he hits his head on the post, and then Bret gets the baseball bat. He hits Sting in the back and then in the back of the head with a baseball bat, like literally attempting murder on the man. Then he goes off the ropes with the bat into Sting's throat. Bret then rakes up the referee. He puts Sting in the sharpshooter, even though Sting's already passed out, and Bret ends up winning. And then as Andrew just mentioned, after that, it is 6 more minutes till Sting is in the ambulance and gone. And then he's gone till March of 99.
Yeah. And one comment that bothered me, I think it was Mike, I don't know if it was Tenay. They said each of these guys are jealous of the other guy's move. It's the same move.
Yeah.
The sharpshooter and the Scorpion Deathlock is the same thing. Now, one thing that always drove me nuts about Sting, when he puts on the Scorpion Deathlock, he does not sit down on it at all.
It doesn't look good, yeah. It's almost like when The Rock does his sharpshooter. He doesn't really sit back on it. It's kind of awkward looking. Yeah.
He's standing up, it's almost like a catcher that's tired of getting in the crouch.
Mm-hmm.
But when they're jealous of each other's moves. What do you mean they're jealous? It's the same move. What do you mean they're jealous? a little thing that just made no sense to me.
Okay, here we go. Up next.
I'm looking forward to this, and I've been looking forward to this for a week. Let's do
actually
this.
like a week and a half because we recorded the show a couple days earlier last time. So it's been a while since we sat down and had a conversation. And now we're going to talk about one of the more infamous matches in pro wrestling history. I believe Dave Meltzer gave it a -5 stars. Is that right,
Correct.
Darin?
Yes.
Yeah. So we get the Hogan NWO music, and it's like at this point of these shows too, I'm like so sick of hearing the NWO music. Like I love it. It's great, but like you hear it so many times. We've seen Hogan already come out and cut a promo. I like 3 or 4 other times. Warrior runs out. The thing is though, both of these guys, silence. They're not getting cheered. They're not really getting booed. He tries to do the rope shake. No real response. Hogan's saying he can kill this guy. And it takes forever for Hogan to get into the ring. We get Warrior sucks chants early on. The crowd boos him when he gets on the ropes, but then they cheer him during the start of the match. They boo him again. They don't know who to like. They don't really like anyone because Hogan's past his time as the main heel here, and Warrior has not been built very well. And they're obvious because the point of this was just to give Hogan the win. Warrior's in charge early. Hogan ducks out of the ring. And nobody cares. Like the crowd is really been checked out now after the last 2 matches that were kind of slow plodding matches. Now we get the Hogan sucks chant. We get an awkward ref bump, and then Hogan drops the knee on Nick. Hogan drops the leg on Nick Patrick. The Giant ends up coming out. Warrior ducks, and Hogan gets nailed by a boot from the Giant. Stevie Ray and Vincent are also out there. They go for a pin when the ref is down. Bobby mentions how the ref is taking a beating all throughout the night. Hogan takes off his weightlifting belt. He starts whipping Warrior. And then Warrior's kicking the ref? Like, what? What's going on here? I don't understand. Like, Hogan chokes Warrior. Everything is so slow. When Warrior misses the splash and Hogan's like slowly getting up, that was the point of the match where I was just shaking my head and it's like, this is sad. These are 2 guys who 8 years earlier, but that's the thing. We're not talking about a match that was 2 years earlier. We are talking about 8.5 years earlier. These guys are not the same guys. They're not the same characters. The crowd doesn't care about either one of them. And they can't, for 2 guys who were always thought of being limited in the ring to begin with, they're past their prime. I mean, I don't think we see Warrior ever again in a ring after this, really. He has a couple small, like, independent matches, but we never see him in anything mainstream at all again after this. Vince, I think, knew that Warrior was kind of past his prime also. That's the thing. Warrior actually is quoted later as saying that he had his best match ever and his worst match ever with Hogan. I think both the Savage matches are probably better than the Hogan match, to be honest. But I understand why Warrior would like that Hogan match, the first one. That was the night for him. Double axe handle from Warrior off the top rope. Hogan's busted open. Cue the low blow. Everybody drinks. Another low blow. He hits his leg drop. And then, what the hell does you need this Horace Hogan involvement in this? Like, what? I mean, I'm surprised that Hogan even wrote off on this because Horace helps him win the match. I figured Hogan would want sort of a cleanish kind of a win over Warrior. He misses a second leg drop. Warrior fires back up. It looks like Warrior's going to win. And then here comes Bischoff. He grabs the ref by the neck. Horace hits the Warrior with a chair. It is so bad, like a horribly soft chair shot. I love you, Darin. I love you, Andrew. I love you enough to where I would crack you guys with a chair in the back to make it look good. I don't want any of us looking soft here. It just looks bad for everybody when you do that. And it's Tony at the end of the match too. You could tell Tony is just disgusted. So we'll start with you, Darin. I mean,
Here we go.
I don't really have anything positive. I mean, there was a couple times where they tried to recreate spots from WrestleMania 6 that were just worse. You could tell they were trying to go back to the well for things that just didn't hit as magically as they did hit 8 years prior. I don't have a positive thing. I mean, I didn't even mention the lighter and all that stuff, which we'll get to with Hogan. He pulls out a bag. It looks like he's got a bag of like weed or something, and he pulls out a baggie and it's got a lighter in it, and he's like trying to get the lighter to work. That the finish doesn't even end up working. Warrior has to sell it. There was nothing good or redeeming about this match.
No, nothing at all. So, okay, the crux of this match is supposed to be, this is the guy that Hogan can't get by. And the story of the match should have been told from that point of view. And they started kind of like that in the beginning, where Hogan's trying to beat down the Warrior and Warrior keeps coming. The problem is they did that for like a minute. That should have been a big, big part of the match. Now, the difference, this match had to be different than the match from 1990 because it's a different time in wrestling. Okay, in 1990, the kids that were Warrior fans really believed that this was some lunatic guy who nobody knew where he was from and was capable of all kinds of powerful, crazy stuff. Nobody believed that in 1998. It's only 8 years difference. It might as well have been 40 years difference in terms of the intelligence of the wrestling fan. It's a different world. When they start to recreate some of the WrestleMania 6 stuff, the Greco-Roman knuckle lock, the crisscross, they tried to recreate one of what I thought was the iconic moments of WrestleMania 6, where Hogan slams the Warrior and the Warrior just pops back up and Hogan looks at him like, oh shit. They tried to do that again. That doesn't work twice. It worked the first time. You're not going to be surprised the second time when he gets up again because you already did it once before. So the match has like 3 legit wrestling moves in the entire thing. I think 2 body slams and a side suplex. It's absolutely putrid. Now, into the backstory, because there's really not a lot about to say about how awful the match is. They bring Warrior in, and you can, WCW and Bischoff can talk about whatever they want until they're blue in the face, that they had these grand plans for the Ultimate Warrior. Here's why I call bullshit on that. Number one, you have entered a time in WCW where the entire company is basically reality-based. They have completely transcended wrestling from the characters.
The names even. Yeah. Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. Yeah.
Hall, Nash, guys with last names. This is who these guys are. They're street thugs, whatever. This is just them. They're people. They're not characters. Okay. In no way, shape, or form does a lunatic guy who just rambles on and runs and shake ropes and wears tassels and crazy face paint and crazy trunks fit into anything that they're doing.
Not in that world. It's a different world.
No, it's a different world. So unless you're completely incompetent, which is possible because we've seen some incompetent things, there's no way that you can say that this character is somebody that you had big plans and designs for. Because you just elevated Goldberg, who's a guy. It's Bill Goldberg. Might as well be John Smith. He's a guy. He's a crazy guy. He's a powerful guy. He's indestructible, but he's a man. He's not a crazy face paint lunatic warrior. So you didn't bring this guy in to give him a run. Okay?
They had a guy that's got like mystical stuff in Sting, and they botched everything with him. You know what I mean? Like all those the mystical kind of Undertaker-y, Ultimate Warrior-y stuff. They had it with Sting. They were doing a damn good job with it through '97, and then they botched the hell out of it with him. And now at this point, he's just another guy. So everything they said about that was crap. You're so right, Darin.
Yeah, it's complete crap. Okay, the guy has 3 matches in WCW: the War Games match, a tag match on Nitro, and this. So you went from having these grand plans and huge whatever thoughts to a 3-match run that ends with him losing to Hogan. I don't know why they chose to do it. I don't know if it's because Hogan was cooling off at this point and he thought that getting a win over Warrior would do something for him at this point in his career. But that's what this was entirely about. It was about erasing or trying to erase the clean loss on the big stage for their big guy. Now, I don't know how trying to blow the guy up with fire and having him take a chair shot, putting you over, does anything for you. But nothing about this makes any sense in what's happening in WCW right now. And it's part of the reason why it pisses me off to no end. Because you insult my intelligence when you tell me what you were actually planning on doing, when it makes absolutely no sense. And I have no doubt in my mind that this is all Hogan ego, which bothers me even more. The match sucks. Warrior's done. Hogan is garbage at this point. He's beating Warrior over the head with a belt strap, and it's not a no DQ match. That's okay. We'll let him do that too. That fits in. It's just none of it makes any sense. And in my opinion, from bell to bell in terms of actual wrestling, this is probably the worst wrestling match I've ever seen. And, I'm not going to blame Warrior for that. I think they put him in a spot that he is completely set up to fail.
We've seen Warrior deliver on the big stage. And we've seen Hogan deliver plenty of times on the big stage. He's done here, though. He's past his prime. He's not really worried about wrestling quality matches. It's just, again, everything about this show, this era of WCW, if there needed to be any sort of organization, any sort of, sense of, order, it was done. Yeah. No shot.
And Andrew, I'll leave you with this. Here, what I genuinely think happened is this. I think Hogan went to them to bring him in, the Warrior. I think they sold him a bill of goods. I think they said, look what we did with Hall. Look what we did with Nash. We're sticking it to McMahon. You'll have an opportunity to come here and stick it to McMahon. You're going to get a run. You're going to main event with Hogan. You're going to go over here. You're going to go over there. I think they took advantage of a guy who had a lot of issues at this point in time, had a lot of demons himself that he was dealing with. I think they took advantage of all that. They took advantage of the relationship and the lawsuit between Warrior and WWE, and they put him in a spot to fail. And I feel badly because I think that's entirely what this was.
Yeah, that basically nailed it in about 5 minutes or so. That's as good a study as I think you could potentially have of this match. The one thing I will disagree with you on is I actually liked the crisscross and slam thing. I thought that was a nice little head nod. And the first time I watched this match as a kid, when that sequence happened and when Hogan went tumbling to the floor, I had this feeling of hope that wound up just completely evaporating over the course of the next 45 to 60 seconds. Because that was the one spot that the crowd actually popped for.
Yeah, they were a little into it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Warrior pops back up. He does the thing where he works the crowd and shakes to the heavens and whatnot. That was actually pretty cool. Then the rest of the match happens. The NWO does a series of run-ins in here, and once again, the Giant shows off his athleticism because he takes a really nice over-the-top bump on a Warrior clothesline. But what I remember about that clothesline is Giant tumbles to the floor. Crowds actually pop for that. They go to Warrior, and he's completely gassed.
Just blown
He's
up.
got nothing. And when you're built like that and not built for endurance, that'll happen. But the booking in this match was some of the worst booking I have ever seen. From an in-ring perspective, technique-wise, it's one of the worst matches I've ever seen. I've seen worse. It's certainly not from, the big two on a big stage, but I've certainly seen worse. But my goodness, when you consider what these guys were able to do on a match that we have seen and recapped already several weeks ago, this was just so many different kinds of awful. My one good thing that I'll take away from this is that I was able to get Darin to watch this match after he He sort of violently objected a week and a half ago when we taped this.
I'd only seen it once, Andrew. I swear to you, I never watched this match. I've seen the clip of the ending in a couple of documentaries. I have not watched this match from start to finish, though, in 22 years.
Unbelievable. That two guys who could do so much would get this kind of a match on a big stage. But I mean, just awful here as we get set for our. Oh, and then again, when we're playing the timing here, okay, they gotta know by now that they're running long, right? They gotta know. They know by now everything's been over, everything's running long. But what ends up happening? I mean, after the match, there's another 3 minutes of BS celebrating with Hogan where he tosses the ref, he hugs Horace, he tells Horace he passed the test, he squirts lighter fluid on Warrior like they're going to burn this guy alive, like they're going to burn him. The officials come out and stop it, and then Bobby says every time he sees this man, he goes to the worst levels of humanity, and he does something else. And Bischoff, I mean, Bischoff is good, but I don't know what he's going on here. So let's get to the main event. And Andrew, we'll start with you. I know we're running really long today, and you got a show coming up. You're going to record a little bit after this too. This to me is Goldberg's best match. It really is. I mean, everything that I've read, Diamond Dallas Page pulled a Macho Man in this match. He's literally scripted the whole thing out, move by move by move by move for Goldberg. The crowd loves Goldberg. The crowd loves DDP. You get the Michael Buffer with the big fight feel here. Really long intro, though. Again, it takes a couple minutes, but I don't think you're going to find a better Goldberg match. Maybe you like the Brock match. It's quicker, but this is a legitimately good 10-minute match.
Yeah, this is hands down from a technique perspective, Bill Goldberg's best match ever. From an excitement perspective, you can argue Brock Lesnar's match at WrestleMania. That was pretty cool, but it's a different kind of match. Diamond Dallas Page was 42 years old. This was his biggest match yet. He had some experience on the main event level with winning War Games the previous month, and he had the run with Randy Savage that was just spectacular. But this was his first time in the real title picture, and you can see why. Dude's over. The dude has a connection with the crowd. He's got a really fun finishing move, and he's good in the ring. He's not spectacular in the ring, but if you let him do what he wants to do, he'll wind up giving you a really good match. So you have that guy. And then you've got Bill Goldberg, who gets a Road Warrior pop the second he comes out of the back. 154 wins, no losses. Story writes itself. Was really easy for them to book Goldberg as strongly as they did. What was not so easy and what they pulled off was making anybody else seem like a legitimate threat, let alone somebody who was 42 years old, who was outweighed by about 40 or 50 pounds, and who didn't look like they had any business being a main event star. Because Page, for as good as he was in the ring, he looked old. He didn't look like your traditional main event wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
He just didn't.
He's just an everyman. Yeah.
But that's what they did here. And for the first time in the history of Goldberg's streak, you bought that someone could end it. That's what I remember about this match and how well it was booked. It was 10 minutes. There was no fluff. There was no filler. The announcers didn't have to worry about any NWO garbage. This was the one match where the announcers were on point. For that reason, there were no overarching storylines other than what was in front of them. And it was really freaking cool. Now, of course, being WCW, they had to screw this up. We've mentioned this. We've talked about it. This was when some of the pay-per-view buyers, about 15 to 30%, depending on who you believe, had their feed cut out. Because with all of the things that we've talked about with this match, with this broadcast running long, someone forgot to tell the pay-per-view provider. So Goldberg and Page are circling each other in the ring, and right before they lock up, that's the show.
And they have to show this the next night for free on Nitro and then refund everybody.
How stupid can you be? How stupid can you be? This was a tremendous match that people wanted to see because there was genuine suspense around it. But no, we had to have Saturn against Lodi. We had to have the Nitro girls dancing 4 times. We had to have Hulk Hogan cutting that 5-minute promo early in the show. We had to have all the stuff with Buff Bagwell. Just, it's maddening to me how they could screw that up. But in typical WCW fashion, that's what they did. Having said that, if you've got the network and you think Bill Goldberg has never worked a good match in his life, fire this match up, because this match is going to change some minds when you see what this guy can do with someone that can carry him. This was really, really good.
Andrew, give us your closing thoughts, and then Darin we'll go over this match a little more and close things out. And just to give you the heads up, Andrew, it's my selection for next week. I'll let you know right away before we go. I'm going to do it, folks. This is something that I spoke with Darin about a few weeks ago, and I expect the next week's show to be another long one, because we're going to be talking Survivor Series 1997. We're doing it. We're talking the Montreal screw job, folks. So get ready for that one next week. So Andrew, give us your closing thoughts, give us your plug, and then go record Champagne and JD.
I like that pick because that also has Steve Austin coming back on a broken freaking neck, winning the Intercontinental title. There's a lot of significance to that show. I love the pick. So I like this show for what it was. And if you understand that there's a lot of bad stuff going on and you accept that, it's a lot easier to accept the good stuff on this show. Jericho Raven, really good match. Disco Inferno Juventud Guerrera, really good match. Bret Hart Sting, decent match if you don't overthink it. Goldberg DDP, really, really good match. And then you get the hate watch qualities of Hogan Warrior. Definitely skip Nash against Hall, though. That was just horrifying and tough to watch. But at any rate, as mentioned, I'm running up against the time problem of my own. I forgot to inform the pay-per-view provider that we needed an extra 30 minutes. Shocker, right? That's how we end this thing. Real fitting. Right. But at any rate, add Andrew Champagne on Twitter. Some good racing coming up this weekend. Belmont coming up next weekend. Going to be a lot of really cool stuff going on there. We're interviewing Jose Contreras tonight. He has been incredibly patient, and I really hope you listen to this so that he gets the credit he justly deserves. But at any rate, this has been fun. Darin, I really appreciate you doing this despite being incredibly painful for you. But you showed a lot of intestinal fortitude in gutting out watching Hogan and Warrior, which I know had to have killed you.
Well, Andrew, thank you for bringing back wonderful memories. I appreciate it. But yes, it was a lot of fun. I'm definitely looking forward to talking Screwjob with you next week, too.
Going to be fun. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
That's Andrew Champagne. He's going to duck out. So, Darin, give us your thoughts on the main event here. I mean, we know Goldberg is a guy who would come out, and at this point in particular, I mean, he was coming out wrestling 30-second matches, 1-minute to 2-minute matches max. We're not even talking about a guy who was going 4 and 5 minutes. So getting a 10-minute match out of him in a main event situation was not going to be the easiest thing, but these two guys had good chemistry. DDP got it out of him, and this is a really entertaining main event.
Yeah, I think it's by far Goldberg's best match. And I know that there are people that like the Goldberg-Lesnar match from Mania, and I liked it. It was a good match. This is a different match, though. This is the Goldberg-Lesnar match is who's going to give in to the other guy's finisher first. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's spears, jackhammers, German suplexes, F5s. That's the match.
This is a real match.
There's just nonstop wrestling moves here, and it's fun to watch Goldberg do that. In addition, they tell a story in 10 minutes. It's a WWE style match where the two guys tell a story in 10 minutes. It goes from kind of the beginnings of the workings of a brawl where they lock up and DDP's like, all right, I'm going toe to toe with you, and Goldberg keeps throwing him off. Then DDP hits him with an arm drag, and Goldberg gets pissed, and they fly through the ropes together. And you kind of get a little bit of a brawl atmosphere. And then it settles down, they start to feel each other out, and then you get into the wrestling match, and you get some really good wrestling moves. You get the shoulder injury to Goldberg. He goes for the jackhammer. Can't get him up for the first time in 155 matches. He can't get the guy up, and they're putting doubt in your mind. Maybe this is going to be the moment. And then DDP counters, hits the diamond cutter. No matter what as long as the match was good, I genuinely believe no matter who won this match, they were getting a pop.
Yep.
Even if DDP won, I don't think they could have went wrong with the outcome so long as the booking of the match was good. And I think probably 6 minutes in, the two guys knew that they had something really good going on, and they didn't have to worry about the finish causing an issue because Goldberg wins, it pops. If they had decided that DDP was wins, there would be a pop too. Didn't matter. They do a great job. Great sell on the injury with Goldberg, putting doubt in your mind. Really enjoyed it. But like we said, if you got cut out of this pay-per-view before this match, man, you really got ended on a much different note than those of us that got to see it. And look, like I said before, are there good matches on this card? Yes. The problem for me is simple. Hall and Nash is terrible. It's painful to watch Hall. Bret and Sting's not terrible, but the Bret Hart character that I'm watching,
it's disappointing.
It's disappointing. And as a huge Bret Hart fan, I have a very difficult time watching that match. The Hogan Warrior thing is just foobarred for so many reasons. And if you take those types of megastars in this business and you have an hour straight of just hot garbage.
Yep.
I cannot get into the pay-per-view.
It feels like two different shows. It feels like if you took those three matches just off of the pay-per-view and then put the Goldberg DDP on the end of like the Steiner stuff, I'm fine with it. I really am. It's like this is one of those where like less would have been so much more because there was really just nothing offensive about the first part of the show. Like the Saturn Loaded match was nothing. Okay, that couldn't have been on there. But these three main events, and the problem with all the main events too, they weren't like we're building up a big match and then it comes out and it ends up being a squash and it goes 2 minutes. These dragged. They were 14 minutes and another 14 minutes and another like it's just way too long for all of it. So I didn't mind going back and watching it. There were some fun spots. I like seeing Jericho there. I forgot about how great this match was with DDP and Goldberg. I was surprised to see how over Rick Steiner was. But, man, the Hogan and the Nash stuff, and as someone like you, like Bret's my number one. He's my all-time favorite. He's like the guy for me. Seeing this, it just reminded me of an era that I kind of forgot about, and I've tried to like black out of my head of that WCW Bret era where he just didn't care and it wasn't a good marriage from the beginning.
Yeah, I totally agree. And of course, since you picked it, I mean, next week we're going to talk about, the event of what leads up to it. And look, I will preview a hot take now. I am not a conspiracy theorist guy, okay? But I will lay this out there about Survivor Series 97. McMahon creates the Mr. McMahon character, which changes the landscape of the wrestling business. Shawn Michaels gets a belt and goes over. Bret Hart goes to WCW and makes $9 million. Everybody makes out from the outcome of that show. On top of which, Bret Hart has a film crew following him throughout the show to create a DVD special as he's leaving the company,
which was like unheard of at the time too, to like get that kind of access that they were given,
unheard of. And on top of it, McMahon knowing Bret's leaving and knowing he's got the issue with the finish, allowing a camera crew to follow Bret around. It's like telling me 1 + 1 = purple. Okay, it doesn't make any sense from an understanding. And if you want my hot take, I believe that the whole damn thing is a work and everybody was in on it. Because I can't possibly imagine that worked out so damn perfectly where everybody makes out and everybody comes out. I mean, look, Bret's career is never the same, but the guy gets $9 million. Okay, Shawn gets a belt. Mr. McMahon, characters created. Bret screwed Bret. I'm sorry. These guys are smart. McMahon is smart when it comes to business like this. I think the whole damn thing is a work.
That's the tease for the 1997 Survivor Series show that we'll be talking about next week, the Montreal Screwjob. Darin, Zoccali, thank you every week for helping out again, buddy. We look forward to next week when we're talking. I mean, this week, I think we broke our record. We're into 2 hours and 20 minutes plus on this show. And next week, Next week, we might even be able to go longer because there's so much to discuss just around everything dealing with Brett, with Sean, with McMahon, all the stories, all that stuff. So look forward to it. Let the folks know, where can we find you out there on social media?
Sure thing. On Twitter, at the Track 7, wrestling, obviously horse racing, anything else Belmont excited for coming up as well. And Meadowlands is back. So now we get a couple of races under our belt. We could watch these horses and see how they come back out of the break and, get some action on the harness as well. So, yeah, Twitter, at the Track 7. Looking forward to speaking to everybody.
DZ, thank you very much. We'll be back again next week, folks, with Darin and Andrew, and we're going to be talking Survivor Series 1997. Stay tuned. There's plenty more on That's What G Said.